OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
7:30 on this Wednesday morning. You're very welcome along to OTB AM. Eoin and Nathan with you right the way through until 10 o'clock this morning. And we're going to be picking through the Republic of Ireland scoreless draw in Budapest last night. Vinny Perth will be with us shortly to dig into Stephen Kenny's team selection over the last couple of games. We're going to be talking rugby as well later with Keith Wood. We'll be touching on the captain's challenge there and whether rugby games are too slow now. And we'll also have Bernard Brogan with us after 9 o'clock this morning to chat about the Dubs and if he sees anyone stopping the 7 in a row. As ever, we would love your thoughts. You can tweet us at Off the Ball or you can drop us a comment on the YouTube stream as well. Nathan Murphy, a very good morning to you.
Morning on.
So it seems with the Republic of Ireland, things have gone from bad to not so bad?
Yeah. I don't think we're quite over what happened against Luxembourg just yet, but we are starting to scale the mountain once again. And last night was an end of season friendly. It felt like an end of season friendly for large parts of it, but everything is done now in the shadow of the defeat to Luxembourg. And because of that, calamity and crisis is just around the corner. So Ireland need to avoid that for as long as possible, and they've done that over the last 5 days. There was a 7-minute spell against Andorra where it looked pretty horrific. The players got the head down, turned it around, and then last night there were plenty of positive signs. It was a ropey enough start, particularly at the back and trying to play it out from the back, but once they gained a bit of confidence, gained a bit of momentum, there was plenty of chances there for Ireland to win that game, and maybe with some attacking players, a bit more sharpness and a bit more game time under their belts, Ireland would have taken those chances. So I think overall Stephen Kenny would be very happy with how the last 10 days or so have gone in camp because they've got some positive results. And also it does seem as though there's a closeness and a togetherness of the players. Finally, he's had them on the training ground together. So if you think about last night and you were to flip it, imagine Ireland had qualified for Euro 2020 and our last home game was a friendly against a Hungary side who hadn't qualified and were in crisis, and Hungary came and drew 0-0 at the Aviva Stadium. We'd be raking over the coals of this. We'd be wondering what's the point of going to Euro 2020. That this is an absolute shocker. So listen, Hungary aren't one of the better teams going to the Euros, but they've been on a good run. And while the two goalkeepers in either half made some important saves, I think a lot of players have done themselves no harm over the last while. And, we know these players need 10, 15 caps to feel comfortable. And you see that with somebody like Darragh O'Shea, who we don't even look at as one of the younger players anymore. He just fits into that side comfortably. So a lot of the same problems are there for Stephen Kenny, which I'm sure we'll get into over the next while. Of he doesn't control what the players do with their clubs. Are they going to come back in September with any game time? Does he have a natural goal scorer who's playing week in, week out? He doesn't. Does he have somebody who is really grabbing hold of that midfield at the moment? He doesn't. But there are signs of life once again, which is maybe a long way where we were after the Luxembourg game.
Certainly. And there was this pretty charged atmosphere, I think it's fair to say, in Budapest, which they had to deal with last night. This very strange build-up to kick-off, this sort of interminable wait. Like, I definitely noticed it yesterday. I was kind of like 6 minutes to the hour, and it's like they're already going to the national anthems, and then there was this massive delay where I think the players must have been hanging around for about a full minute, a minute and a half before they could actually take the knee. So there was this tension beforehand after everything that had happened with the England game and the way they'd been booed. And I think maybe a lot of people's worst fears were confirmed when they heard the reaction from the crowd in Hungary last night when the Irish players took the knee. So that reaction probably feeds into, I guess, maybe some of the praise that the team are getting as well, because we haven't really seen this team in any sort of crowd, let alone a hostile away crowd. But this is something that we want to just touch on as well this morning, Nathan, because it's a pretty big deal, to say the very least. Like, some people might have expected it, some people maybe wouldn't have seen it coming. The Hungarian players obviously decided to point to the respect badge on their arms, the UEFA respect badge. This is something that we've seen over the last few months. Poland did it against England in March. The Czech Republic did it against Wales around a similar time, and last night Hungary decided to do it against Ireland. The real bone of contention was how the crowd reacted and the scenes really in that stadium last night. And we should hear from some of the Irish camp because they spoke really well about this afterwards. Stephen Kenny, Adam Ida and Chidozie Ogbeni were speaking in the aftermath of last night's game, and here they are specifically on the booing of them taking the knee.
I think it was the right decision. You know, I was approached about whether we wanted to take the knee, and I insisted that we... In fact, I approached Barry Gleeson said, it's something that we want to do. We want to take the knee, and I think it's an important message. I think it's a very, very important message. The fact that it was booed is incomprehensible, really, and it must be damaging for Hungary, with the Euros in Hungary. It's disappointing, and it doesn't reflect well on Hungary, really, on Hungarian support. It doesn't reflect well, and I think our players wanted to do it. It's important. It's an important stance, and I commend them for taking that stance.
Obviously, it's disappointing to see the fans and the whole stadium booing us taking the knee. It's for a good cause, trying to stop racism. We need to. It's a sign to kick racism out of society, and just the reaction was very disappointing for us. We weren't expecting that, and obviously we wanted to take the knee, and like I said, it's for a good cause and trying to stop racism.
I was obviously disappointed because we all go through different stories and different histories in our lives, and this is something that obviously black people have been fighting for many years, and discrimination and racism is there's no place for it in any sport and any place. So I was quite disappointed, but it is what it is. We stood strong, and I'm so happy that we as a team took the knee to show solidarity between us all.
Hey, Chidoze, I mean, with those chances when you came on, were you thinking of a good way to, ram those boos down their throats?
Yeah, I know early on in the game I was just hoping that I come on and get opportunity just to score in front of their fans, but maybe it was the best thing that it didn't happen, because I might have let my emotions get the better of me with any sort of celebrations I would have done. But I just tried to score, really trying to help the team. But a good result here, especially against a team that getting ready for Euros, and a strong squad they had, and you can see the quality they had in the first half. But just to get this opportunity in this big stage is truly a blessing.
So this has obviously been quite a debate in England, Nathan, over the last couple of days in particular, which automatically has been copied and pasted into an Irish context as a result of last night. But really, all you need to do is listen to Ida and Og Benny there, and that is all you really need to hear from. That is the most important view you're going to hear from why the players are taking the knee, and it's pretty disgraceful, really, the reaction from the Hungarian supporters.
God, how depressing was that, listening to Chiosi Obena at 24, coming on, playing for the Republic of Ireland, and what he's thinking about is having to ram something down the throat of the opposition supporters because of the way that he has been treated. And this is thankfully a very diverse Republic of Ireland squad. It's going to become ever more diverse. Ogbena was the first African-born player to play for the Republic of Ireland last night. We're going to see a lot more of that. We want to see a lot more of that over the coming years. I think you only have to look at the underage team to see the players that are coming through. But make no mistake, they're pointing at the respect sign. What they're essentially saying is the old all lives matter. That we don't support you taking the knee. We don't support the black players in this team. We don't support their right to protest. And while they may have pointed at the respect sign, you just had to look at the crowd in the background making Nazi gestures. Like, this was not a welcoming place for a lot of the players in that Ireland squad last night. And Stephen Kenny stood up last night as Ireland manager for his players. It was very tense before the game when the Ireland players didn't go and take the knee for 5 seconds, for 10 seconds. That went on, it felt like, for 20 seconds. And part of me wonders, at some stage, are a team just going to stay kneeling for that little bit longer to make that point, to really ram it home? This is going to be a huge issue, it feels, over the course of the European Championship, that there's so much focus on it in England right now. Like, it was a time where we would, in our own stereotypical way, throw this out as odds happening over in Eastern Europe. Like, remember what happened at the Riverside? These are members of the England Official Supporters Club who, after listening to the brilliantly eloquent way that Gareth Southgate expressed what it must be like for, like Josie Ogbonna, a young man, to know that his own supporters don't believe and don't back him in that way. They listened to that and still went and booed the supporters before the England game. Like what that must be saying to Rashford and to Sterling and the players who have put themselves out there as footballers to stand for something greater than just that is incredibly depressing. But I feel Stephen Kenny, when he talks about social beliefs that he's passionate about, he's brilliant. Like he was very comfortable last night talking about that because it's something he truly, truly believes in. And it wasn't easy for him to do that last night. Remember, he is over in Budapest. Viktor Orban, the Hungarian Prime Minister, the right-wing Hungarian Prime Minister, was in the stadium last night. Stephen Kenny's in a room full of Hungarian officials. In that press conference, there was a translator. Every time a question was asked, they translated. Stephen Kenny would answer. It was translated. So the translator's having to translate into Hungarian exactly what Stephen Kenny is saying about his people, about his supporters. So to be in a small room staring down at a lot of Hungarian officials and to say that in front of them, I think was very brave from Stephen Kenny. But I'm not in any way surprised that he did it. But it's no less depressing that for Adam Eda, these guys should be living the dream. They're 19 years of age, 20 years of age, going out representing their country. And this is the nonsense they have to put up with. But like this will be seen, I'd imagine, in Hungary as almost a soft racism compared to the hard racism that a lot of the countries have got away with over the last few years, where, you know, we've had bananas thrown onto pitches, where we've had any amount of racist chanting, and UEFA have done nothing about it. What are UEFA going to do about booing players taking the knee? Absolutely nothing.
You'd like to think that a bunch of fans making Nazi salutes on camera is pretty hard racism, to be quite honest, and whether or not that's going to be picked up on camera again as the games in Budapest unfold over the next couple of weeks remains to be seen. But it did seem that it was either this mad coincidence that, you know, the 5 or 6 fans that you could see behind one of the Hungarian players at that point having to be making Nazi salutes, or else there was actually a large percentage of the crowd doing it last night. So that's going to be interesting to see if that happens again over the next few weeks and how UEFA actually respond to that. What I want to see is Ireland against Azerbaijan this September, the Ireland players take a knee, and it to be met with brilliant respect by the Irish supporters in that stadium, because this will be the first time during this whole movement that there will be fans at a stadium watching the Ireland team play at home. So like that is how the Irish team responds. Because you're right in what you say, that this has been viewed as like a Central European problem or an Eastern European problem, and then you look at England over the last couple of days and it's very much not a Central European problem.
Maybe you're being very naive, and I would agree with you. I would love to see that, because as you say, we haven't been in that position yet where the Irish players have taken the knee on home soil in front of a stadium with a crowd there. I would really hope that actually in response to this, that the Irish supporters would come together, would get off their feet, would applaud this and make clear to the world that we are a group of supporters who want a diverse team, who want to welcome these players and who want to welcome their right to protest and to make a stand. I really hope that is the case, but maybe we're being incredibly naive to think that there aren't a section of Irish supporters, and we know there is a section of Irish society who aren't looking at Chelsea Ogbena last night and feeling the pride that maybe we are, or a lot of Irish supporters are.
Yeah, for sure. Like it's also on the point you made about Stephen Kenny taking that stand last night. I was just trying my best to find what the Hungarian camp were trying to say last night. It's very slim pickings out there, but Marco Rossi, there was a quote from him carried on the official Hungary account, which on Twitter you can Google Translate, and he said, "We always give maximum respect to everyone. This has been the case tonight and will not change in the future. However, they need to be asked about the reasons for the behaviour of our fans," which seems like a little bit of a dig, at least at his own supporters, which I guess when you are a manager in that country, that can be a hard thing to do. So maybe a little bit of solidarity from the dugout coming from Hungary, but that's probably as much as you could say at this point. As you say, the next couple of weeks are going to be very, very interesting as these fans filter back into grounds at the Euros. And whether it's Budapest or whether it's Wembley, you'd imagine that the knee will not be met with all-round applause, really, in general. I think that's fair to say. On Ogbeni, obviously brilliant last night when he came on. Moved from Lagos to Cork as a child. As you said, they're the first African-born player to represent the Irish senior men's international side. So here's a little bit more from Ogbeni speaking last night.
Can I just ask what it means to you to be the first African-born player to represent Ireland at senior level?
Oh, it's truly a blessing. It's a big moment for me, myself, and my family. As I said, you know, I want to inspire any young player. Most importantly, being from League of Ireland, and you know, coming from that tough structure of football, you know, just to, you know, showcase what, if you believe and never give up, what can happen. You know, to be, you know, obviously titled the first African born is, you know, I'm really blessed, and it's a huge honour, and you know, something that I want to inspire everyone else to, you know, to follow their dreams. This is a really wake-up call. I've gotten the first taste of it. I'm more hungry now for more, and I'm more driven. So I will take, you know, pre-season. I will, you know, be sharp and trying to be as fit as I can. You know, come the season, give all I can, because this, obviously, getting this opportunity, and you know, these opportunities don't come too easy. So I will work twice as hard to be here, and I really enjoyed it here, and you know, that's what my aim is now. I'm so driven, and I don't want to miss this opportunity coming, and I will do everything I can to hopefully be an option for the manager.
This guy was like Matthew McConaughey in The Wolf of Wall Street, Nathan. Only appears for a few minutes and is absolutely sensational, steals the show. You would have loved to have seen him score that goal at the near post where he just goes for it and rattles the side netting.
Oh, when he came on, I thought it was Stephen Kenny rewarding him for maybe what he's brought to the camp over the last 10 days and giving him that first cap. But he's only on the pitch for 3 or 4 minutes and has that brilliant chance. He probably should have actually taken his time with that one and picked somebody else out in the box. Whereas the chance then 2 minutes later where he cuts in from the right-hand side and he tries to put it across the Malumbi, you're just thinking, put that right boot through it. But every time he got on the ball, he caused absolute havoc for the Hungarian defence. I think he won 3 frees. He should have won at least another one on the edge of the area. And as he said there, players come through the League of Ireland. Rotherham were relegated last season, so down to League One, maybe that will suit him, getting a season of first-team football. And you look at him and think he's a player who should be able to make an impact in League One. But there's great photos circulating last night of him playing for Nemo Rangers in I think it's a Cork under-21 final where he scored the winning goal. And to go from there through Cork and Limerick and make his way into the international side at 24. And the one thing we know with Irish players in the last decade in particular is that they have been developing later. There was a great recent history of players at 25, 26, 27 making an impression then and actually going on to have a big, successful international career, winning 40, 50 caps. So while we're obviously very excited about 19-year-old Troy Parrott and 20-year-old Adam Edat, there's no reason that over the next couple of years, Ogbene can't get it together, score goals in League One, maybe get back up to the Championship next year. And Championship is the level for Irish players now. If you're playing in the Championship, if you're scoring goals in the Championship, you're going to be in that Ireland squad and getting caps. But if you're looking at a 5-minute cameo, he couldn't have done much more than that.
Speaking of brilliant performers last night, and I think if it wasn't Ogbene, then Shane Duffy, his performance might have brought a smile to your face last night. Nathan, you were speaking to Stephen Kenny about his performance. Here's what Stephen had to say.
Hi, Stephen. Can I just ask about Shane Duffy's performance tonight and maybe his role within the squad in general? He was saying after the game he couldn't complain about not playing when he hasn't been playing at club level. The influence of him and the likes of James McLean and Seamus Coleman travelling while injured, of those senior players, of keeping the ship steady while maybe there's been a bit of panic on the outside.
Yeah, I think, listen, I think Shane has showed himself to be an exemplary professional again this week. I think he's obviously had a difficult season by his own high standards. He recognises that. He's determined to rectify that. I think he come in every day, trained well, always had a brilliant attitude around the camp, and understand we have the squad that we have and the squad that we're building. The ethos is very important going forward, whether players are playing or not playing. We need that collective will, particularly now in the introduction of 3-game windows. So there is great opportunities for players in those 3 games in 6 days. So Shane Duffy defended really exceptionally well tonight. He is an immense presence, and it's a credit to him.
Yeah, we'll get it stuck into Shane Duffy with Vinny Perth in just a moment. Just to let you know, OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning, start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. And let's set the table for the show ahead. So Vinny Perth on standby. We'll get into the sports pages, dominated by Hungary 0, Ireland 0 at 8:10. Keith Wood then will be with us at 8:20 to talk about the direction that rugby's taking, maybe the captain's challenge, hammering home the fact that rugby is at a pace now which is becoming less watchable than it was in the past. We'll have a news update with John Duggan then at 8:20, and then Hannah Hegarty, the Dublin camogie captain, will be with us at 9:05. After 9 we're sticking with the Dubs, and it is Bernard Brogan who is launching his new paperback book. He'll be with us to chat a little bit about the current Dublin team and how their 7 in a row hopes are shaping up. And then Eric Donovan reflects on a brilliant couple of days for Irish boxing, really, and now a very, very exciting summer in Tokyo for them. So a stacked couple of hours coming your way between now and 10 o'clock. Delighted to welcome Vinny Perth to the show. Good morning to you, Vinny.
Morning, how are you? How's things?
Yeah, good. Let's get straight into that then. We were just hearing from Shane Duffy. It did seem that the move to the 3 at the back, at least from his perspective, suited him.
Yeah, I think what we've seen is a guy who went into camp, he looks really fit. So I think he used those that week, 10 days, to get himself up another level in terms of fitness. He obviously played his way into the manager's thoughts, and he got a game. So I think as a footballer, whether you're a coach, player, manager, you love to finish the season well. So I think mentally for him, that's huge. I think he'll take the break now. Where his next move is, I think he could end up anywhere, but we've heard rumours of clubs like Forest, etc. What Shane is he's a proper defender who doesn't like to play on teams that have too much of the football at times. But he showed last night his passing range can be decent in the back three. And I think he was part of, I suppose, what you would call an excellent away performance. And he's very much suited to that style of defending where, listen, it wasn't just his body on the line, but he made some great blocks at different stages. You could tell him and Egan's organisation skills were excellent. So it was a great finish to it. What's been a really difficult season for him. And I think as a football person, you always have huge sympathy for what Shane has gone through the last 12 months. I know. And people would be smart-arsed on social media about someone like Shane and his form at Celtic, but the impact of what's happened to him in terms of his father looks like it's playing a huge part of his difficulties, I would say, over the past 12 months. So it was really delight for him, and just shows you good man management. And with a player like that, instead of binning him off, he stuck with him, and it's paid off for us. And hopefully that's the start of Shane rebuilding his career last night.
How significant was it that Stephen Kenny did change his formation to accommodate 3 at the back?
I wasn't surprised by it at all. I think away from home, I think we've seen some of that of late. I like the idea of Andorra not playing 3 at the back, because I think we've seen that in the Luxembourg game. The problem with that 3-4-1-2 situation is you don't hurt teams in wide areas, and albeit Ireland weren't great against Andorra, but you're more attack-minded in the other shape, I would say. So I wasn't too surprised. I think we'll see them do that against Portugal in the next game, in particular. So I wasn't too surprised, but it was an opportunity for me again to continue to work on the system. They were on the training ground, so it doesn't surprise me whatsoever. I think they see probably that suits most of their best players. So I think Ireland might play that 3-4, whatever forward after that shape a lot more going forward, particularly away from home. As I said, I thought it was a perfect away performance, but there's definitely areas of improvement, but a great away performance.
Vinny, does that system lend itself to playing out from the back the way Ireland attempted to last night? Because by playing 3 at the back, you're sacrificing somebody maybe in midfield, and it did feel as though that when the centre-backs took the ball off Gavin Bazuna, they looked up and quite often there was nobody there for them. And particularly in the first 5-10 minutes, it made it a very nervy start. They just couldn't get out of their own defensive third.
Yeah, so there's 2 ways of that, Nathan. So first of all, and he did do it to a point last night. First of all, the reason you play out from the back is not to look good on the eye and say, wow, I'm a great coach, I play out from the back. If you remember Addison's clearance to Zinchenko in the semi-final of Champions League, it's a long ball, long pass. So what Ireland started to do last night was mix it up a little bit, and you Hungary went and pressed Ireland, and you knock the ball over the press, and that then creates a little bit of space. So why you play out from the back? It's not, as I say, it's not to look good on the eye. Yes, that's great as a coach, but it's to create something further forward. So that's the first thing, and I think we've started to do that. So, and the players will understand that, and there would definitely, I would imagine, be information on this camp about, look, why we're trying to play out from the back is to create something further forward. So we started to see that a little bit last night. There was one or two occasions where you even seen the ball gone long, and it's James McLean as the wing back going for the header. He won a couple of them, and their breaks of the ball. If Ireland picked that up, Hungary have 6 players forward pressing them. So it's a great tactic. The other key to it, and for me, is just like you explained, the importance of someone like Josh Cullen in that system. And I don't think he's been excellent over the last couple of games. And I think that's, if you're going to play this system, that's a slight concern for me in terms of where is Josh Cullen at? Because what I mean by that, he's got to knit the whole play together. So we're not seeing enough of Josh Cullen getting it off one centre half and switching it to an opposite fullback. So, or if James McLean checks inside, he should give it to Josh Cullen, who then switches the play out to Matt Doherty. And we're not seeing that at the moment. And that's a concern for me. I'm not saying Josh just was okay last night. I would say to you, he's safe at the moment. He's finding his feet at international level, which is fine. But we've got to speed that process up if we're going to get better. So that's where the challenge in the system is. We've a lot of good midfielders in, if you think about it, Hendrick and Alan Brown and James McCarthy, just near Sheahan. I think I felt Sheahan looked, people were sort of critical of him last night, but I felt there was a real confidence in his passing range. Yes, he should have done better and he should have passed more, etc. But he looks like he belongs in the team, where Cullen doesn't yet. And it looks like the manager has huge faith in him. And I presume from training, etc., he sees more in him than I'm currently seeing. But that's a big key for that system for me, is Josh Cullen has to be better and make us play from that deep defensive midfield role.
Is there an alternative there, Vinny? Like, Josh Cullen is only 9 caps, so maybe you got to stick with him, because it does feel, you can't be half pregnant, and Ireland at the moment feel a bit like that we're trying to play out from the back. All those things you're saying, where if it works well and it's quick and you're releasing the full-backs, it's brilliant to watch. And actually, when the game opened up in the last 20 minutes, it felt as though Ireland were a lot better at doing that. But is there a player that can, like, it feels like it's a crucial role in the entire team for this system to work?
So what we've learned is we have to play 2 defensive midfielders. We learned that early on the campaign. We're a bit too open, and we didn't play with 3 at the back, of course. So I think it's about the combinations and finding the right combinations of 2 guys. And people won't want to hear it in terms of we're starting to, but maybe it is like whether it's Sheahan and Jeff Hendrick with 2 people ahead of him, like we seen last night, and Knight and Parrott and this type of system. Maybe it's more people who have a little bit more confidence, a little bit more understanding of their game, played at a high level for such a long time. So in Hendrick in the Premiership, Sheahan at the level he's at, it may be along them lines. The challenge we have, and not to duck your question, is in a couple of months' time, we don't know where Jeff Hendrick is in for the Portugal game in terms of his form. He can't really get into the Newcastle team. James McCarthy is being released out of Crystal Palace. Where does Alan Brown go in terms of his? He would play, so for me, he's a big chance. Where does Avila? Where does Hannah Hegarty go in terms of his game? So there's a lot there. Where's Robbie Brady at in terms of his career? So we're in a little transitional period in central midfield where we have a lot of decent players. But I think if Stephen's going to persist with this system, which I think he is, I think that's crucial. And unfortunately, there's no easy answer. There's no one sticking out there where you go, well, he should be playing him because at least he'll knit the play together. So we're going to struggle in that situation.
That's really interesting, because it did seem last night that if there was a midfielder who might be in trouble for the next game, it might be Conor Hourihane. But from what you're saying there, it actually is going to be Cullen.
Well, no, that's my personal opinion. But if you remember late in the game, Cullen got robbed on the ball. Just trying to, he got the ball off one of the centre halves. I don't think he has at the moment, whether it's something the staff can work on, he has that. It's very difficult to explain to you where he receives it from the right-hand side and they call open the body out and go out to the left. I don't think he has that. And he got robbed really late in the game where ball into his feet, two Hungarian players just came all over him and he lost it and it was a 4v3, but Ireland ended up getting a good block. He apologised. And I understand people were a little bit critical of Sheahan, but I just felt on the eye, and it's just my eyes, he's more comfortable at that level. Cullen may become a better player, but I think Sheahan looks more comfortable at that level in terms of getting it off one of the centre halves and switching it out to the other side. Because when you do that, then it's difficult for teams to press you because you can't have players everywhere. So for me, that's an important role. Not being critical of Cullen, he's only 25, which is quite young in terms of his international career, but he's got to go up another level or two for me in that system.
There's confidence level as well, I guess, within that squad are probably at a low point. It's interesting you mentioned that moment where Cullen lost the ball, because I think back to the game against Luxembourg, and Matt Doherty gets a lot of criticism around the Ireland team, but he spent the majority of that game out on the right-hand side in acres of space. He had the freedom of that right-hand side. And when he was back at Wolves, Willie Bolly'd get the ball left back for Wolves or left of the three, and he'd play a 40-yard ball, and suddenly Matt Doherty be free. Or Jean Moutinho dropped deep, and he could play a 60-yard ball because he had that in his locker, and suddenly Doherty was free. Ireland didn't have that player to release him and utilise all that Matt Doherty's good about. If they don't have that player, does Stephen Kenny need to recognise maybe they don't have that player, and actually this system doesn't suit Ireland?
Yeah, but no, I think he's in a position now where I think he's seen three at the back, 3-4. Again, we can debate that another day, 1-2 or 2-1, whatever way you want to call it. I think that system suits his better players. Enda Stevens is suited to that system. I think Matt Doherty is suited to that system. But it's not. I have to be careful. It's not an assassination of Cullen in terms of performance. Is improving on last night. So in the Luxembourg game, as you mentioned, Cullen never once passed the ball to Matt Doherty. And I thought Matt Doherty at times looks a little bit slow on the ball, a little bit. But we need to get him away on the game quicker. And the example you use of the switch of play, actually, ironically, he done it last night, if you remember, from a throw-in. The ball, he takes a throw-in, the ball gets set, and he switched it from his right-hand side all the way over to James McLean on the other side. And that's how you beat a press, and that's how you beat teams. And having that doesn't look like anything. It looks like a 70-yard switch of play. And then James McLean is away on the other side. And we've got to do that a little bit more. And that's why I think the importance of Cullen and Sheahan and whoever plays in the midfield is crucial for this team to improve. But I think now, particularly away from home and against the top sides, you're going to see this system. So I think they've got to just improve on it, not being it, improve on it. Because Hungary away and Serbia away, where we more or less used it, were probably our two best performances in this new regime. So I think he's going to have to stick with it, but also show adaptability in terms of if you're home to a Luxembourg or away to an Andorra, you probably need to change up your team ever so slightly.
What about Jason Knight then, Vinny? Because you've been speaking with us quite a bit about Ireland's need for a number 10. Is there a future for him in that role, at least as Ireland's most advanced midfielder, if you want to use the number 10 phrase or not, with regards to Jason Knight? That seems to be where he seems to be popping up. Yeah, and this is where it's a bit early in the day. I was a little bit frustrated last night. I don't think he played necessarily as the 10. So I don't want to go into loads of detail. People get lost. But I thought if you want to use it in a good example of the Champions League final, the way Chelsea played, I thought there was, and I know even Stephen said we're going to play 3-4-1-2 pre-match, but the position of Troy Parrott was so deep that Knight actually played quite off the left, if that makes sense, in similar to what Mount and Ziyech did in the Champions League final. So I think that's the system they're looking to get to, for me, from watching. So Knight sort of played off the left, but as I said to you guys before, that you get two different types of 10. You get that silky, the one that knits the play together, loads of beautiful touches, all of that stuff. But the modern day 10 covers the biggest amount of distance on the pitch for teams in terms of the runs Knight made in behind, didn't get the ball enough. It's something they need to improve on. And also the cover position when Ireland didn't have it.
he was in lots of really good covering position against their players. So he's emerged. That's the key to it all. If you remember the under 21 setup, he didn't really play. Malumbi and Conor Coventry were ahead of him in the Irish team. Parrott played, etc. And now he's emerged because of his form at Derby. And that's where we're at with Ireland and the amount of young players we have. I think Jason Knight has emerged massively. It looks like a move maybe on the cards because Derby needs some money, a move to a higher level, which is good for him. There's some talk of Brighton. And he's jumped the queue of people like Malumbi, Conor Coventry, as I said, who's the Ireland 21 captain. And he looks like a player that I really rate. He looks like the one that could knit the play together for us. So real positive was Jason Knight in this window. And he's taken, I watch a lot of championship football, and he's taken his form from Derby into the international setup. So he's got a real future for him, whether it's him or Alan Brown, or him and Alan Brown in them sort of midfield positions. I think that's a real positive for Ireland, and we can hurt teams with their sort of running power from midfield. So it's a real positive, Jason Knight.
Vinny, you mentioned maybe there Jason Knight at times, they're trying to get him into a sort of ZH Mount role, and Ireland are also playing three at the back in the way Chelsea do. Does that suggest to you that Anthony Barry's having a big influence on tactics and what Stephen Kenny's trying to do?
Yes and no, because ultimately the manager makes the decision. So, I mean, I think it's well known, I'm really close to Stephen, but we actually try not to discuss football with him. I spent an hour with him a couple of weeks ago at a League of Ireland game. Didn't discuss the Ireland international setup. So, but for me looking in, people are saying Ireland played 3-4-1-2 with Parrott up front with Adam Maddah. I don't think they did. I think whether it was by design or because of Troy Parrott's positional sense, they certainly looked like that sort of Chelsea combination was coming out in terms of the two number 10s playing in the system. And I like that system. I think it suits the two players quite well in terms of what they're looking to do. And if you remember, the biggest goal in the last 12 months was the Champions League final, Mount for Ziyech, Mount off the left. And I think that's what they tried to replicate to a point. So if Anthony Barry's in the group there, they can discuss that. There will be, if what Thomas Tuchel is doing, what Chelsea players are able to do on the training ground, that can be replicated. That can only be good for the Irish international setup. And also remember, the players listening to Anthony Barry on the training ground or in a video session is looking at someone who's won the Champions League. So therefore, the level of respect them players will have for him is huge. So that's a massive positive that his team are trying to play the same way as the Irish international team or vice versa. So I think that's a massive positive for Ireland. But ultimately, I think Stephen would have decided to shape himself and then brought it to his staff, if that makes sense. So, but it's a huge positive for them.
Just one last quick one on the midfield then, Vinny, before, because I do want to get into Ida and Parrott. Jason Malumbi's introduction looked like the key that Ireland needed in the first half, where they were struggling to get that ball between the lines. Malumbi was picking up the ball in deep positions, going on these surging runs. Was that just because the game had opened up in the second half, or is there actually a stylistic opportunity for Malumbi here in this Ireland midfield?
I think Malumbi's huge energy. I think he needs to go on and play. This is a big summer from wherever he ends up. Does he break into that Brighton team? And sometimes pre-seasons are great for young players. Just arrive into the first team. So I think it's a big summer for him. But I think the game opened up. I think it opened up completely different. I think Hungary wanted to win the game. Obviously, the last game before the Euro, so they were a little bit more attack-minded. And then, particularly late on a warm day, the introduction of someone with the legs of him was huge in terms of the way that the game evolved in those last 10, 15 minutes. So I think it was a combination of both. But, I mean, we can't criticise a manager for games and games by not having a little bit of experience in his team, a little bit of experience in midfield. And then when he doesn't start someone young and come the other way. So I think it's a difficult midfield for Stephen to find the right balance. The best way I can explain to you is I think we've lots of good midfielders. I'm crying out for 2-3 midfielders that hit top form in pre-season in early August ahead of the Portugal game, and I don't think he could. I think you could name a lot of the team now ahead of Portugal. I don't think you can name the midfielders yet because of there's no one there grabbing that jersey in terms of their club form or international form.
That is, you say midfield, and listen, maybe in September it doesn't matter as much because all players are going to be in a similar position. They're just off pre-season. The Portuguese players are going to have probably a shortened pre-season because they'll have been at the European Championship. So maybe actually match fitness and game time doesn't matter as much in September. But for the positives that have been there, a lot of those same problems remain. You've touched on the midfield issues and the amount of players whose club careers are up in the air. It's a similar situation up front. We have no idea what is going to happen with Troy Parrott and Adam Ida over the next year. Adam Ida may force his way into the Norwich team and play 25 times in the Premier League, or Norwich may go and use that Bundia money and spend 25 million on another player to play with Timu Pukki, and Adam Ida finds himself out on loan. Troy Parrott, God knows what's going to happen when Spurs appoint a manager. That is the frustration at the moment, that a lot of what Ireland need to kick on is totally out of Stephen Kenny's hands.
Yeah, and that's where, I've come on here and tactically being critical of Stephen in terms of the Luxembourg game and different stages, and that's where there's got to be balance around the argument of the manager of Ireland at the moment, and you're in such a difficult position. Wouldn't it be great if we had like our two goalkeepers, we had players at the same time they're crying out for football as well. We're in a big transitional period where we have to respect the value of blooding these young players. Knights and Lumby and Ida and Troy Parrott, and the manager has given them a real opportunity, and it's almost I keep using this phrase of building a national team like a club side. So sometimes he has to ignore club form, but particularly when there's a short gap between windows, he has to ignore club form and play what he feels is best to suit the team. Well, the difference is when you look at Abonya last night, you look at Adam Ida, Troy Parrott, he's put them in the shop window by actually playing them in terms of clubs in the Championship looking for players on loan, because I think we have to be okay. If our players are playing at the Championship level, we have to be okay with that. That's good enough. We have to get away from years ago we had X amount of players playing the Premiership. It would be great if they were all playing there. But the Championship is good enough level. You look at Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, what they've been able to do in the last couple of years, with mainly based out of the Championship. Scotland now have moved on to the next level with a lot of Premiership players. But I think it's just important that the players get that little bit of luck now, and it's important that the manager gives them an opportunity into an international window, that managers in the Championship and scouts will have watched these games. So that's why it's important that Stephen was very loyal to the young players to give them that opportunity. So I think it's been a great window for a lot of them players. Like Troy Parrott will come away from that really positive, asking questions to sports. Where am I going? What am I doing? Who am I playing for? Can I go on loan if I'm not going to be on the first team? Adam Ida has to be asked the same questions at Norwich. I've become an Irish international here. Can you not back me and let me go and play with Pukki? And if not, I want to go and play in the Championship. So I think that's where the manager has managed them players well in this window, and that's where it's positive.
Is your gut feeling that Ida and Parrott can be an attacking duo for Ireland long into the future?
Yeah, I think stylistically, I think that's what Stephen likes. Troy Parrott comes, he's got that little bit of vision, he has that little bit of more, what would you say, more skill, that pick out passes, but also he's a brilliant finisher. But I think what Adam Ida does as he gets better is he leads the line. I don't think he was brilliant at leading the line last night, but I think him as a focal point. Remember, we're looking at a young guy who can't get into the Norwich team, 19, 20 years of age. And we're not crying out saying he should have started. Who should he have started instead of him last night? So it's not like the debate at right back. It's not like the debate in midfield. It's not like the debate in goalkeeping situation. I don't think we've much choice other than to make an international centre forward out of this guy until someone else comes along and grabs the jersey. And at the moment, there's no one else there. So I think he has to, at the moment, he has to. And what Stephen has done with him is given him confidence that will help his career long term. And people have to see that a little bit and understand what Stephen has done with Adam Adar there. He's given him a real chance and a platform for him to build his career because of his international form.
One last one then, Vinny. Bazunu or Kelleher, who's in the box seat there?
You're like, every time I come onto the show, you just get me in trouble with League of Ireland people. I have to go Kelleher, but Shamrock Rover fans won't be happy. But to be fair, it's a great headache to have. I just think Kelleher just edges it for me in terms of his experience at first team level, and in terms of being out, like, he hasn't been faced in Champions League football. What I like about both of them is they've got two world-class goalkeepers as the number ones in Edison and Allison. And good goalkeepers do this. I've seen it. You can see traits of Allison in Kelleher, and you can see traits of Edison in Bazunu as well. So that's really positive. But I wouldn't be worried no matter who starts. But for me, I'd pick Keevan Kelleher.
You wouldn't be worried about the lack of game time, Vinny? Because we are in a situation, again, like every other part of the where Kelleher may play 5 games.
I think it's going to be an issue for both of them. But again, you have to make the argument it's different if Randolph was playing even in the championship. He's not playing. I think the advantage Kelleher has is if we're going to play out from the back and then chip balls into full-backs in midfield, he has that in spades. So he suits the manager's style more than anybody else, I would say to you. It's not to say Zuna can't do it, but I would say he suits the style of play more than anyone else. And that's why, for me, Keevan Kelleher should be Ireland's number one going forward. Now, like all the players, he needs some game time, and not too quickly. We look at Phil Foden at Manchester City. He's now supposedly worth 180 million, and everyone screamed, he needs to play, he needs to play, he needs to play. Sometimes you need to be around the very best in the world, and I think he's around Allison. So I think that's okay for short term, but in time, of course, he'll need to play regular games. But we're in a brilliant situation in goal, and the future's really bright in that position. Yeah,
it certainly is. Vinny, great stuff as ever. Thanks a million for taking the call.
Thanks, guys. Talk to you soon.
Cheers. Vinny Perth there on the line with us. It is 17 minutes past 8. It is Wednesday morning. You're with us here on OTB AM. And all this week, we'll be bringing you the chance to win a €150 Expert Electrical voucher with thanks to the good folks over at Expert Electrical, your home for large screen TVs this summer. It's a sporting summer at Expert, and you can find your perfect television on expert.ie or in their 67 stores nationwide. We'll have a voucher winner each morning, and then one of those lucky winners will also have the chance to win a 55-inch Philips TV if their name is picked out of the hat on this Saturday's Off the Ball show. To be in with a chance to win, just name this mystery voice.
And I think you black out a bit when you hear the bad news, and I'd never been dropped before, so...
That is €150. You can tweet us at Off the Ball with your answer. Let's hear that clip one more time.
And I think you black out a bit when you hear the bad news, and I'd never been dropped before, so...
Yeah, so you can get in touch there. You can tweet us at Off the Ball, and we'll be taking your entries there. Plenty of reaction coming in this morning. Martin says, well done, Shane Duffy, onwards and upwards for the big man. And I think that's kind of sums up what a lot of people are thinking about Shane Duffy this morning. People are generally delighted to see him back and playing and in good form afterwards, and his post-match interviews certainly suggested that. So, as I say, it is coming up to 19 minutes past 8. Packed show still to come on OTB AM. We're going to hear from Keith Wood right after these.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Have you subscribed to the OTB Rugby podcasts? If not, here's some of what you've missed in the last week.
Since he has been suspended, I've had some interesting messages. My mum hasn't come out great from it. It's been interesting to say the least.
He would give it to you, and he gave it to me several times, and I was running around after him trying to kill him for the rest of the session.
Subscribe now to the OTB Rugby podcast stream wherever you get your podcasts, or get the entire OTB catalogue on the OTB Sports app.
First up, a Go Loud original from News Talk.
Get all the news you need to start your day with First Up, the podcast that brings you stories, analysis and interviews with the top newsmakers. First Up, available each weekday morning from 7 a.m. on Go Loud.
Subscribe to this podcast for free on the Go Loud app.
Why not check out the Boyle Sports betting app for a full range of markets on shots on target, assists, passes and more on every match of the Euros, all powered by Opta. Rated 4.5 stars on the App Store, you'll find all our latest odds and offers for the Euros. So remind us where to go, Stevie G.
Boyle Sports, this is betting.
18 plus, bet responsibly, gamblingcare.ie.
Sean, what's that thing going round the garden?
That is our new Husqvarna Automower.
Automower?
Yeah, it's a robotic lawnmower from Husqvarna. Cuts the grass automatically, has GPS tracking and an app. Even works in the rain. I just thought, why spend time cutting grass when I could spend it with the family?
Great! You can put the dinner on, so...
No can do, love. Have to paint the man cave.
Husqvarna Automower. Never mow again. Learn more at husqvarna.ie.
Invisible Threads, a Go Loud original.
As we celebrate the 6th anniversary of marriage equality, Invisible Threads meets older members of the LGBTQ community who reflect on their journeys and tell their stories. From shame and isolation to conversion therapy, from living with fear to coming out as an older person. Join me, James O'Hagan, for this powerful 8-part series, winner of the first Go Loud Podship.
Subscribe to this podcast for free on the Go Loud app.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
It is 8:21. You're very welcome back. We are turning our attention to rugby now, and delighted to say that Keith Wood is with us. Good morning to you, Keith.
Morning, Eoin. How are you?
Yeah, very good. So let's start off here with what Stuart Lancaster has been saying over the past couple of days. He's been talking about the captain's challenge. He is not happy with this, Keith. He wants to see it binned. Are you on the same side of the fence as him?
I am, which, look, I think Lancaster talks a huge amount of sense all the time. He's absolutely at the leading edge of the game, of the sport, living and breathing every second of it. I thought there was a good merit in the idea of the captain's challenge, but what it's become is this dragged out affair. I think the TMO we've lost the run of the TMO in itself, and there's too many things being referred to it. So the captain's challenge are just additional ones of those. And it's funny, I've had it's an ongoing thing for me that the spirit of the law of rugby is incredibly important. And so because there could be 5 or 6 infringements at every breakdown, there's a kind of a flow to it, and the referee tends to dictate what that flow is, and he can understand for him if that guy went off his feet but actually he didn't materially affect something or other, he can make a decision accordingly. So for me, always you've to respect the referee, and that is key, and it always has been key to the game. I think that's been eroded a little because it's now going back to not just blatant mistakes or foul play. It seems to be every possible eventuality you can put up on the screen, and the game has just become untenably long. Actually, it's too long and frustrating to watch.
So which parts would you take immediately and erode beyond the captain's challenge? Is it further limitations on the TMO, for instance?
Absolutely. I think you need to be able to look at the TMO and for scoring of tries, and it can't go down to super slow-mo, and there is a possibility of a ball moving forward in that instance. For me, if you're looking at it 5 or 6 times, you just have to accept the fact that, yeah, as close as could be, that's a try, as opposed to whether there may or may not have been the most minute of knock-ons. And in times past, they all would have been tries. That's the simple truth of it. And I don't think you should be going back to see. I think you do need to go back and see foul play. I do think that's very important, and I think World Rugby are having a big drive to try and tidy up the game, and I think that's something that's very important. But for the ones that there's an immediate sense of doubt, is it or isn't it? You need to just try and move those out. So blatant is the word I would use. If there's something that's been done blatantly, it's a blatant knock-on or a blatant high tackle or foul play, absolutely TMO protects the players. Other than that, it just drives everybody mad.
The length of the game is one of the big issues, as you mentioned there, Keith. The TMO is obviously one of the reasons behind it. Are there other facets of the game at the moment that you're looking at and thinking to yourself, that needs to be speeded up or that needs to be taken away because these 2-hour spectacles are spectacles no more in quite a few moments?
Well, I tell you, TV will lose the run of itself pretty soon, and when you have fans back in the ground, they'll get very frustrated with the extent of those games. So, and TV schedules you suddenly have to put them 2.5 hours between each other, or 3 hours, just in case, because the matches are kind of overlapping. So that's one of the byproducts of it. For me, I'm still the things that I would want to change are the height of the tackle law. I'd still like to be brought down a little bit lower, and the idea of the jackler. I've never liked the jackler. It wasn't there when I started, and I feel like an old man saying things like that. But the idea of using your feet, you weren't ever allowed to use your hands in a ruck, and that meant if you suddenly saw hands in a ruck, it was a penalty. So I did rather the rucking with your feet, even though I know that isn't considered the most palatable. But for me, it's the idea that only one person gets to put their hand on the ball. And at the moment, you have people complaining to the referee that they're on their feet, they're entitled to be there. Well, if they weren't the first person in from the opposition, you can't have another 2 or 3 guys deciding to put their hands on the ball because it's there in front of them. So they're the bits I'd like to tidy up a little. But other than that, I like the game. I think we've had a few ups and downs in the last few years, but a lot of it's very good. For me, I just wanted a little bit safer. I also think that if you bring the tackle height down a little, that means there's going to be more offloads, and that becomes more exciting.
Keith, in terms of the referee's role, like we have a lot of voices now. You think back to the Champions Cup final, and Wayne Barnes is the assistant referee, yet at times it seemed to flow between himself and Luke Pearson. You're wondering who was actually refereeing the game. Is it too complicated in terms of the rules just for one referee? Do we need that? Do we need very vocal assistant referees, a very vocal TMO, because so much is expected of the referee?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question, Nathan, and but I would ask it slightly differently, and I would say who is in charge, and you need to make certain that the authority of the referee is sacrosanct. And if he comes out afterwards and says, "Yeah, I made a mistake there," we should accept the fact that he made a mistake, and that should be fine. But when you hear TMOs trying to convince referees for different reasons, I think that undermines the referee. So I do think you need other voices, and I do think the game is very complex and complicated. But I still think the guy in the middle is the guy that should have the authority. And it's funny, the referees that you tend to like are the ones that talk, the ones that show high levels of respect to the opposition or to the captains, but also are quite hard on the players. So we have to stop some of the stuff. There's too much, and it was interesting, some of Lancaster's comments about there's too much appealing going on. There absolutely is too much appealing going on. But that's rectified incredibly easily in rugby, because you march them back 10 metres and say, "Lads, shut up. The only person who's allowed to talk to me is the captain." Now, in that instance, you have to treat the captain with respect, and the captain has to treat the referee with respect. And that's the way the game is and should be managed as well as possible. That's one of the key components for me. So I think you should have a conversation with the captain when you need to, but the captain can't challenge every single decision that's made in the game. And that's what's actually come in the last 2 or 3 years.
Keith, it does feel as though, it does feel over the last decade that maybe there's been a bit of a cult of a referee in terms of Jerome Garce, Wayne Barnes, Nigel Owens, that when it's announced ahead of a Six Nations game, it's either welcomed from an Irish point of view or there's massive groans. Was that always the case? Was the rugby referee always held up more than a football referee who, by and large, you don't take any notice of until the game is getting underway?
Always. And always for the reason that rugby is an incredibly complicated game. And every time you hear somebody say it's very simple, you know they don't understand it very well, because it is complicated. There is nuance. It isn't exactly black and white. And as I described earlier on, you could have 5, 6, 7, 8 infringements at every single ruck. So how do you make the determination over which one is first and which one is fitting within the spirit of the game? So if you look at soccer, it's pretty much not nuanced. I mean, the only nuanced part really for the most part is, did he make contact for that tackle to fall over, or is he offside or not? And even for me, I'm looking at soccer and the TMO at times has said, yeah, his right shoulder is an inch offside. That's just lunacy for me. I mean, lunacy. And it's brought down to that level where you're kind of, that becomes a huge issue. And I think it takes away an awful lot from the game. So, no, I always think referees have different styles because it depends on what the refereeing was like in their country. Now, they're trying to homogenize that as much as they can in World Rugby, but the French will still say jouer, you know, and the New Zealanders might be a little bit more lax as to what is a forward pass or not because they want the ball to be lashed all over the field. Such is life, you know, and you have to understand where the ref is and where the ref is with that. And I do think there's been a cult to the referee. But look, for me, I still think that as a supporter of the game, as a watcher of the game, Nigel Owens was a little bit entertaining. I think maybe sometimes was too much about him, but for 95% of it, it wasn't. I thought he was an excellent referee. And there's also a small sense of humor within it. And that I think deflated anger at different times. So look, for me, I was happy enough to have a guy of that quality reffing a game, you know, and you may not like some of his interpretations, but they're his interpretations, you know, and you have to cater for that and you have to play accordingly.
It's interesting that you mentioned the offside thing in football, Keith, because that has definitely killed some of the spontaneity with football a little bit. Even when Scotland qualified for the Euros, their goalkeeper wasn't sure whether or not he could celebrate after saving a penalty in case VAR would pull him back for stepping off his line. Do you fear that rugby could move in that similar direction over the next little while unless there is some sort of a resting on the way it's moved over the last couple of weeks?
Look, when you hear, because when you're trialling something, you're going to see the possible unintended consequences. And one of those is not knowing that the final whistle is over. I mean, sorry, that has to be one of the things that happens. And as it stands, the TMO can go back on something, definitely, in that instance anyway. But no, it doesn't look right, doesn't feel right. It feels almost like a litigious part of sport as opposed to sport. It's just, for me, I don't like the look of it. And I think you want to be able to celebrate at the end and not be having a peptic ulcer trying to figure out whether there's a TMO call again after the final whistle.
Just a couple of other things we wanted to get your take on this morning, Keith. We were covering David Nucifora and his press conference last week. A number of interesting threads from it. One of them is this notion or this fact now that we're unclear about whether or not he's going to hang around beyond next year. His contract finishes up next year. If you were working with the IRFU at the moment, would you be looking for a potential successor to Nucifora at the moment?
I think they should have been looking for the last 2 or 3 years and for the guy after that. And thankfully for us at the moment, I think we have, there are a chunk of people who have played rugby for Ireland and who have got involved in the game at the highest level and have the whole gamut of skills that are required. So I think when Nucifora was employed, I don't think that was the case. So now you look at it and you say you have Conor O'Shea, you have David Humphreys, who has been a director of rugby and a coach, and has dealt with agents, which becomes incredibly important for holding on to players, which becomes an increasingly important part of the job in Ireland. We also need to have a huge drive on talent development because that's something that's required. We are very top heavy with the school system and the Leinster school system, which is brilliant for Leinster and actually great for the other provinces because we tend to take players that don't get into that squad because of the amount of numbers that you have. But that is one pipeline. We need far more. We need the club game to be far stronger. We need guys that mature at 20, 21, 22 and suddenly have the confidence, the skill, whatever it is. We need that conduit working as well, because they bring a different focus from somebody that's been stuck in an academy from 17 or 18 years of age. So you're looking for different pipelines all the time. And I don't know that in that period of time that we have had that part of the Irish game supported. It is one of the core legs of the stool.
And that's the thing, right? Like, I guess Nucifora could maybe make the point that as performance director, supporting the club game directly isn't necessarily in his brief, or maybe he doesn't have time to do it. Do you think that there should be more of a focus on that, maybe a slight changing of the brief for the next performance director that comes in?
I do, actually. I think he's right in what he said, and I think it's a very, very big job. But we need to be. It would be great to have a. I'm going to say high profile, but that kind of sounds like the wrong thing. But it's somebody who knows the Irish game inside and out and is able to find some of these pearls that are maybe drifting through the net. And we do need to build up the club game, because we can't be that reliant on one part of our system. And we need to support the schools and clubs, the schools and underage clubs in the other regions a huge amount, because we don't have the exact privilege that of having well-funded coaches as they have in Leinster, in the other places. And we need to make certain, not that we redress that, but that we get as many players as we possibly can through the system. And Leinster have actually used their funding model incredibly well to expand out into the club area in the wider Leinster regions. And I think they're doing really, really well with that. But at times it becomes too easy to take a really well-established schools player at 18 years of age that's been through 6 years of very intensive training and comes out really, really well, and say, well, actually, he's already an identikit rugby player, let's take him, rather than develop some of the others. So I know that's happening, and that sounds like a big criticism. It needs to happen more, and for that it probably needs somebody over that in the IRFU that is almost on a same level as the director of high performance, because it's absolutely needed.
Yeah, like it's interesting as well, Keith, that all our conversations around Irish people abroad in Irish rugby, I mean, is to do with players and coaches that we rarely think about, as you said, David Humphreys or Conor O'Shea, and the work they've done administratively as well as on a coaching level, and the value that they could offer if this role does become available next year.
Well, I think these are things that become very important, and at times I feel as if I'm being sort of anti people from other countries, and I'm definitely not. What I would say in terms of provincial rugby in Ireland, and when a player isn't deemed good enough in one province and is taken into another province, or that there is no path for him in one province and there is a path in another province, that's fantastic. But it does slightly erode what that province is. And I think that the high level of commercialism that's required, there's an ethos that is involved in some of these provinces, in all of these provinces, and they're historical provinces, not just from a rugby perspective, but they're the things that light it up for a supporter, that there's an emotional attachment to them. Now, they want to win as well, and you always want to have people from overseas playing with them, but it's trying to get the blend right. I think in the last number of years, that blend has been a bit off.
All right, Keith, great stuff as ever. Thanks a million for taking the call this morning.
Cheers, gents.
Cheers, Keith Wood there.
Cheers, Keith.
On the line, reflecting on the last couple of weeks in rugby, which have kind of been completely overshadowed by some of the rule changes that have happened on a trial basis in this year's Rainbow Cup. So it'll be interesting to see if that gets eroded over the next couple of years. I think when you look at some of the comments that Stuart Lancaster have made, that some of the other coaches have made, it would be pretty unthinkable if some of these things were upheld ahead of next year. All right, it is 8:39 on this Wednesday morning. John Duggan is here in studio. How are you, John?
Owen and Nathan, how are you getting on?
All good. Your general feeling around being an Irish football fan this morning?
I'm not too dispirited. I thought it was a decent enough performance. You can never read too much into a friendly international, a goalless draw. I thought defensively the shape was good. He's obviously been changing around 4 at the back, 3 at the back, but I think O'Shea is growing into a good role in the team, Dara O'Shea. I think the goalkeepers are obviously, we're spoiled for choice to a degree in that position. We'd love to have strikers that would be that promising. So Bazunu and Kelleher were really good. Midfield I thought we were a bit deep at times. I do think we need to mix it up from the back. I was impressed by Ida, his determination in the second half to keep going. So look, it's something that I think is a positive development. 3 games unbeaten. With all of these things, you just have to take everything you can get at the moment because we can't afford too many more Luxembourgs. But I do feel that with fans back at the Aviva Stadium, and if they can get behind the team, and if we can get a positivity around it, then we might see Stephen Kenny's tenure become a bit more progressive in terms of results, because that's what it's all about. But good to see Shane Duffy back last night. And great to see Chidozie Ogbene speak so eloquently about the booing before by the Hungarian fans. And he also spoke about how proud he was to be the first African-born player to play for the Republic of Ireland.
Oh, it's truly a blessing. It's a big moment for me, myself, and my family. As I said, I want to inspire any young player. Most importantly, being from League of Ireland and coming from that tough structure of football. Just to, showcase what, if you believe and never give up, what can happen. To be, obviously titled the first African-born is, I'm really blessed, and it's a huge honour, and something that I want to inspire everyone else to follow their dreams.
So Ogbene now playing for Rotherham at the moment. I think it's going to be very important for what happens with players in their clubs next season. O'Shea, Omoba Bedele, Adam Ida, Troy Parrish, Jason Malumbi, Conor Harahan, Jason Knight, how they all get on with their clubs, because that'll be really, really indicative of their progression for the national team. And Kenny is positive about the future.
Obviously, we've had a radical change in personnel, a lot of young players with real potential. We want to make the Irish public proud of this team. The players are proud to play for Ireland, and we want that to, we want the Irish supporters to be proud of the team. So we have a journey to go to get there. But I think the games in September are very exciting. We've got Portugal, which is a great game. We've got Serbia and Azerbaijan in the Aviva with supporters. So we want our supporters to really get behind this group of players and support them.
Like, there's a rallying call, and that's great and everything, but the results will determine the mood music.
Yeah, I like the tone he takes about the Portugal game. It's a great game. It's a great game to have, not a sort of, that'll be a tough one. And maybe the evidence of last night is that they're starting to at least happen upon a plan for those tough games. And maybe, I'm not sure, I'm sure, Nathan, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but if we think about maybe some of the better moments under Stephen Kenny so far, you would probably point to maybe Slovakia and Serbia as 2 of the better performances. I know Serbia didn't go to plan results-wise whatsoever, but there were moments at least, and maybe there is that openness when it comes against playing against a better team that allows this Ireland team to thrive, basically, or thrive as much as they possibly can.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think a lot has happened, particularly since Slovakia, because I keep going back to the Luxembourg game. It was such a shocking result and did so much damage to confidence that it felt like rock bottom, and they're slowly building their way back up. You're right, Slovakia in the playoff was the best performance so far, and for long periods against Serbia. Ireland looked well organised, looked like a team that could create chances. We just don't know what Portugal are going to be like come September. They could be the European champions again. We know they're going to have Cristiano Ronaldo, Diogo Jota, Bruno Fernandes, defence with João Cancelo and Ruben Dias. They could well be the best team in the world come September. And if you come away with a credible defeat, everyone might be okay with that. I think expectations are so low now. Everything is looked at in the context of Luxembourg. That's why last night was suddenly important. It's an end-of-season friendly. Ireland play them every year. Nobody gives a damn what the results are. But because of what happened against Luxembourg, last night was important that Ireland did something, showed signs of progress. So against Portugal, if he gets a result against Portugal, everything that happened previously is forgotten about. And that is the real start of this. I think what you're looking at is coming away from Portugal without being well beaten and then trying to get a result against Serbia, because they need something. I still think Stephen Kenny will certainly see out this campaign. I think the players that are coming through probably suggest he will deserve another campaign after this to get these players who will start another campaign at 15, 20 caps and see how they progress from there. But maybe I'm reading too much into it. I just felt that because of what happens against Luxembourg, an awful lot of these players and the management team still have a point to prove in a lot of people's eyes. And Portugal is exciting for the players. If they could go and get a performance there, it would be one of the great Irish results. And as I said earlier on to Vinny, maybe the fact that September, club experience at that stage won't count for as much because the season will only be on a couple of weeks. So if players aren't playing, if they haven't got their future sorted out, maybe it won't be quite as big an issue. But that game, I think, is 1st of September. It could well be a day, 2 days after the end of the transfer window, which will be another added distraction for the players. I just hope we're in a position to go to Portugal by the beginning of September.
Nathan's already booking his itinerary for later in the year. That's definitely the positive slant on it. And I don't think anybody's coming away from the last, 5-6 days and saying, right, everything is now on track. It's like the lowest ebb seems to have been in the rearview mirror at this point. The Luxembourg thing, it's like you say, you're right, it is this nightmarish event that has to have a knock-on impact on everything that comes after. And it just put a real importance on these last couple of games. And I think even if they hadn't got the win against Andorra last week, there would have been serious questions asked. And by the same token, had they won in Hungary last night, there would have been greater joy about it. I do think people generally are like, hold on a minute, there's reason to be optimistic, but nobody is kind of highlighting this and saying that this is already a success by any stretch of the imagination. Well,
we're going to fail in the World Cup qualifiers. Yeah. How we fail is the key thing. It's hard to get to a World Cup. Only 13 European teams do. The Euros are a more realistic goal. You have 24 teams at the Euros. Hungary will not do anything at the Euros. They're in that group of death. They will be not get out of the group. It's the progression. And when you have a Luxembourg, it means you can't have too many more of them. And that's why it'll be interesting to see, I would call them the middle ground supporters, not everybody who's shouting the loudest, when they come back to Lansdowne Road, what their reaction will be. Will they get behind the team, as Stephen Kenny's imploring them to do? Will they be patient? Will they realise that, look, we don't have the quality of player that we would have had 20 years ago, 30 years ago, comparable to other nations? And we just want to see a progression. If we see a tangible progression and that we're going the right way, then Stephen Kenny will probably get that Euros campaign to bring the players through. But it's how this campaign
as well, John, doesn't he? Like the baseline for an Ireland manager is, if you're in a Euros campaign, you need to qualify. Ireland should be qualifying for the Euros every time. A World Cup, with the way it's set up now, is always going to be a bonus. You shouldn't be losing to Luxembourg. There's no question about that. Ireland should be in a position where they can beat Luxembourg. But he is bringing through an enormous amount of players. And we're already in a situation with Dara O'Shea, still not hit double figures in caps, that actually Dara O'Shea now looks like a comfortable international player. We're not looking at Dara O'Shea as one of the kids anymore. Give it another year before the next qualification campaign starts, and suddenly Troy Parrott will have that amount of caps. Adam Eade will have that amount of caps. Malumbi, Knight. These players will all look a lot more comfortable at international level. And then the hope is that one of them kicks on to that next gear, because while we're looking enviously now at Scotland and Wales, like, the reason Scotland and Wales have had that step up is because they've suddenly had 2 or 3 players who brought them to another level. Like, Scotland have gone through the ringer for 15 years, and suddenly they have a centre midfielder who's starting every week for Manchester United, the best left back arguably in world football, one of the next best left backs in the Premier League in Kieran Tierney, and a whole host of other Premier League quality players mixed into the squad. They've a good solid manager in Steve Clark, and Stephen Reid's doing a great job up there alongside him. But like, players make the manager, and Stephen Kenny can get them to a higher level. Like, unfortunately, that higher level for this group may be, struggling to qualify. But we hope that 1 or 2 of these will emerge and get to the next level and can actually drag Ireland through.
Well, if Wales can get to Euro semi-final, we can qualify for Euros.
Yeah, well, we need to find our Hal Robson canoe in order to do that, John. What else is happening this morning?
Well, Diego Llorente has become the second Spanish player to test positive for COVID. Sergio Busquets already left the camp earlier this week after contracting the virus. They play Sweden in Seville next Monday, so hopefully from their perspective there won't be more positive cases. Karim Benzema went off with a dead leg in France's win over Bulgaria 3-0 in their friendly final friendly before the Euros. I think they're really strong favourites for me for the Euros. It seems Nuno Espirito Santo will be the next manager of Crystal Palace, if you believe the reports. Tennis-wise, Stefanos Tsitsipas into the semis of the men's singles of the French Open will now take on Alexander Zverev. Tsitsipas, a straight sets winner over Daniil Medvedev. Novak Djokovic and Rafa Nadal in action today. The top seed Djokovic against Matteo Berrettini. The 13-time champion Nadal takes on Diego Schwartzman. Coco Gauff lining up in the quarterfinals of the women's singles in Paris. The 17-year-old playing Barbara Krejcikova. In the other quarterfinal, the defending champion Iga Swiatek takes on Maria Sakkari. And horse racing's on the flat today, lads. 8 races. The first half, 1:10.
John Duggan, great stuff. It is 10-9, and yesterday I got the chance to speak to Dublin camogie star Hannah Hegarty. A leading public transport provider of bus services, Go Ahead Ireland, is now a partner of Dublin GAA and is going to sponsor the Go Ahead Dublin GAA club leagues and championships for the coming 3 years. You can follow the journey on goaheadireland.ie and Go Ahead Ireland social media. Here's our chat from yesterday. Okay, delighted to be joined by Dublin camogie star Hannah Hegarty. Hannah, good to talk to you. How are you keeping?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
So this season so far, obviously, it's just got up and running, really. It's been an opening week where you troubled Kilkenny, then lost to Offaly the following weekend. So I presume a mixed feeling on the start of the season is how you'd sum it up.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, coming off the pitch and from Kilkenny, you were kind of like, God, we actually should have maybe a bit more belief in ourselves, and we might have gotten over the line. Now, obviously, it didn't come down to belief. They're just a class team that they're able to finish out games and could be that bit ahead of us in comparison then to coming off against Offaly and just not really knowing kind of what happened to us. We were disappointed in some of our gameplay, and fair dues to Offaly. They were able to come back from being a few points down and really bring the game home. So, yeah, very mixed bag of emotions in the opening 2 games, but can only move on now. Yeah.
In a weird way, does it help to have a huge game this weekend against Clare to actually sort of focus the mind in a sort of championship type way? Because I guess some teams can finish mid-table in the league and they kind of sleepwalk out of it a little bit, whereas this weekend you really have to go hammer and tongs.
Yeah, absolutely. It can really kind of bring the intensity to the training sessions that we've had over the last few weeks, knowing that it's not a do or die game, but it could be. You know, it can really help set the tone, as you say, for championship in the next few weeks, and yeah, really help drive on the sessions that we've been having in the last few weeks.
This is your first season under Adrian O'Sullivan. What's the change in management been like?
Fantastic. I've only got positive words to say. It's been a really positive start to the season, and I'm really looking forward to the next few months, years kind of thing, under the management that's currently in place. It's just been a brilliant setup. The standards that have been set are the ones that you want to be striving for, and there's just a really good vibe in the whole camp.
How much is the Dublin camogie setup a player-led environment, and how much does that help when it comes to seamless transition for a new coach coming in?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we've had to kind of have that transition experience of a new coach over the last few years, unfortunately. But yeah, look, the group of girls that we have, we're kind of not used to it, but like you say, we kind of know how to handle the situation and kind of how to drive on ourselves when we are kind of without a coach for a few weeks. But the management themselves that have come in as well have really made the whole thing as simple as possible.
One of the things that's notable about your own sporting life so far, Hannah, has been the fact that whether it's at underage or college or senior camogie, you've been chosen as captain for your team. And I think it's been across both codes at underage level with Dublin, and as I say, O'Connor Cup captain, and then obviously now with the camogie team. Is there a particular reason for that? I know it can be a tricky question to ask when you want to probably try and downplay things yourself, but is there a common thread even when you're chatting to managers when they offer you the captaincy in all those situations?
Suppose that I just can't stop talking. That's my problem. I'm just naturally, even if I wasn't captain, I just always tend to just be kind of shouting instruction and trying to lead that way. So I suppose that's the common theme. It's an absolute kind of privilege for any team that I do get asked to be the captain for. I suppose I don't strive to do anything different. If you get me, I don't go out of my way to try be kind of the captain of the team, and just kind of how it plays out with itself, kind of the kind of type of player that I am. I think with the Dublin camogie setup, though, I'm very fortunate that you could walk into a session and pick out more than just myself as being the potential captain on the team. It's a very good kind of setup there where there's plenty of girls just roaring and shouting and bringing the kind of the level of the game up with each other. So doesn't quite feel too captaincy role in that setup, which I like.
Is it then a sense of basically leading by example, essentially, the sort of, you can worry about your game and do what you need to do for the team, and that sort of job done to a certain extent, but when it comes to being a modern day captain?
Yeah, absolutely. I think modern day captain is almost just that it's the extra title. You go do the kind of the chats with the media after kind of way, like that's kind of the extent of it, because everyone is being told you have to step up and lead in your own position on the pitch. So it's almost like you do have a captain in every position on the pitch as well. Yeah.
When it comes to where the lifespan of this team and your journey towards success, do you guys set yourself targets for silverware, targets for progress on a year-by-year basis, or how do you approach that when you look back at the end of the season and say, this is how we did in, say, the 2021 campaign?
Yeah, definitely on the progress side of things, like we have certain targets that we would like to be hitting in training matches and challenge matches, any kind of match that we play, we have targets as a team that we want to hit. So I suppose if you could look back and consistently see, okay, we did quite well in this target, that target, and then hopefully, obviously those targets are set to get results as well. So if the results could come with it, you'd love to be able to look back and see, well, okay, yeah, we did well here kind of way. Obviously the results one is the big one that you do want to be striving for. We do want to see more positive results in the games that we're playing.
What are the general targets then for this team?
Oh, I can't really connect. No, just to do with tackle counts, pass counts, completion, all the pockets, all the standard ones. There's no secrets to them, but the ones that lead towards winning games are obviously the ones that you'd want to be
right
doing well in. Yeah.
I didn't even realize. I was even kind of more asking when it came to trophies and actual winning of games. That's really interesting that you bring that up, though. So is that you don't have to tell me the figures, but is that a new development for this team that you are focusing on those, I guess, key performance
it's a different
indicators?
Focus. Like I think every team would focus on the silverware that you can be winning. So I suppose it's the how can you get to winning that silverware is a new focus for this year, which is it's really nice to have those other targets to try be thinking about rather than just winning a game at the end of the day.
So is there a greater level of analysis on every game that you do? Is that more of a new development to try and dig down into some of that data that you mentioned there?
Yeah, definitely. I think in camogie in general, it's come up a few levels in terms of the kind of high performance side of it, that every team has to be doing that deeper analysis on themselves and kind of learning from each performance what you did well, what you could improve on.
Yeah, that is our conversation from yesterday in company of Hannah Hegarty, Dublin camogie competition captain, I should say. And we're going to have James McCarthy on tomorrow morning's show. He was also speaking at that event yesterday, so we'll bring that to you after 7:30 tomorrow on OTB AM. But Nathan Murphy, we are going to put you through the ringer here, the 4-question guide to the Euros from the mind of the man from Ballyhaunis. We did this with Sheahan yesterday. We went and we had Mark Lawrence in as well, almost as importantly as Sheahan as well yesterday. We went through the winners, the golden boot, the surprise package, and your young player to watch as the 4 categories. So who are you tipping to win Euro 2020?
Belgium.
Ooh, I like that shout.
I think this is a squad that is perfectly primed, with a striker in the form of his life in Romelu Lukaku, with quality from back to front. There is no weak link in this side, and they have, at the last World Cup, shown that they can deliver on the big occasion. It was a perfect stepping stone in 2018. They haven't stopped since then. They've just got better and better. And while France, looking at the squad that they put out in their friendly last night and the team, undoubtedly have the talent, I think this is Belgium's time. I think the draw could end up being quite favourable for them. And I'm just really excited to see how they come and attack. And I hope they grab this tournament by the scruff of its neck. I hope De Bruyne gets back to fitness and just ends up missing the first game. I hope Eden Hazard pushes everything that's gone wrong at club level behind him for the last couple of years, and that actually they put on a bit of an exhibition over the next month and don't just win this, but play some brilliant football throughout it, because I think they have that ability. I think the fact they have the likes of Tielemans ready to come in if there's an issue with De Bruyne. Thomas Meunier is still there. He was exceptional at the World Cup. He was exceptional in 2016 at the European Championship on the right-hand side. I know the question mark is maybe defensively, that they're all the old guys that maybe at 2016, Vertonghen, Alderweireld were at their absolute peak. But look at 2016, who won it. Portugal won it with a centre-back pairing of Pepe and Jose Font, two players who were went into their 30s at that stage. So I just don't really see any weak links in this Belgian side. France have the quality to go and win it again. And listen, if France go and win it, we're maybe looking at this French side in a completely different way. We're talking about them as one of the great international teams, having won a World Cup and got to the final in 2016 as well. But this feels like it is Belgium's time.
I agree. I'm tipping Belgium as well. I also think that on that defensive question, I think we're perhaps underrating Jason Denayer quite a bit. It's like, oh, that's the guy who is not as good as Alderweireld or Vertonghen and is just there for his pace. I think maybe people are underrating what a good defender he is.
And international football is different from like any of the weaknesses that maybe have been there for Alderweireld. It's a much slower. Like, these guys are playing at a higher level every week in the Premier League and in the Champions League than they will be at the European Championship for the vast majority of the games.
The Hazard thing, does that concern you?
Like, there's little form there. There's little fitness there to suggest that he's going to go and be the player that he was at his peak at Chelsea. There was always a touch of frustration with Eden Hazard. So you are putting some faith in him being able to turn up at the big tournament. But I often feel much like golf majors where, I don't want to say form goes out the window, but big players have a habit of being able to turn it on when it matters most. And what a legacy. Like, it changes the way you look at Eden Hazard's career completely if he can be the instrumental figure in leading his side to a European Championship title. I'd love to know what the dynamic is in terms of the egos and who the big dog in that dressing room is, because Eden Hazard was the guy to take on the mantle from Ronaldo and Messi. Yet now, is he in the top three players in that squad? Maybe just about. But I think most people would have Lukaku and De Bruyne ahead of him right now.
So Golden Boot then, who are you going for?
I guess when you tip Belgium, you should really just tip Romelu Lukaku and presume he's going to score 6 or 7 goals. The other one I like the look of at better odds is Serge Gnabry.
Ooh.
There's a reluctance to do anything around Germany because of the struggles they've had, but it looks as though maybe there's a bit of form coming into the tournament. And like, Gnabry's goal-scoring record at international level is outstanding. And almost if you look at that table from a predictions point of view, from, you know, people are doing fantasy football, like, all these games aren't going to finish 0-0 between France, Portugal, Germany and Hungary. You know, players are going to score. There's going to be excitement in these games, and they have Hungary in their group. So with 3 teams probably progressing from that group, like, Germany are going to do well. I think they're going to score goals, and I think Gnabry is the main one. I was tempted to maybe just throw a Timo Werner into the mix there, but I think you could see Gnabry getting to 4 or 5 goals quite easily in this. But if you're tipping Belgium, I guess you have to look at Lukaku.
Yeah, especially considering it's Russia, Denmark, Finland, and then, as you say, it's an easier side of the draw than even Germany would be faced with as well, or not Germany, whoever comes second in that group. Sorry, in that group of death would be faced with, because they'd be on the England side of the draw.
The other one is watching England at the weekend, and, you know, Jack Grealish got the penalty. Probably they could have had a couple more penalties. They had 2 penalties, but, you know, if Harry Kane does what he did in 2018 and scores 3 penalties, game over.
Surprise package?
I'm going to stick with the same group. Our old friends, Denmark. Our Denmark a surprise package. I was tempted by Austria, again, looking at that draw and how lopsided it is in certain ways, but like, that's a bloody good Denmark squad. Huge experience, who just seem to have been getting better and better since they changed manager. Like, they've a brilliant goalkeeper and a real leader in Kasper Schmeichel. Defensively, they have a lot of options. Simon Kjær as captain, vastly experienced player at this stage. Andreas Christensen's just coming in as a Champions League winner. Joachim Andersen's in the squad, who is one of the few players to emerge from Fulham's season with his reputation enhanced. Vestergaard is there. Like, we know the likes of Stryger Larsson and Jorgensen. We've seen a lot of them. And then in midfield, they have obviously world's nicest man, Thomas Delaney, who I can't but get behind. It's incredible what, just standing for an interview for 10 minutes after a match 3 years on, the legacy he can leave for my love for Thomas Delaney. And Eriksson. For a top goal scorer bet, a outsider, maybe Christian Eriksen, player of the tournament bet, wouldn't be the worst thing. He's a huge, huge price. But Højbjerg's had a smashing first season at Tottenham. I think going to score massive amount of goals with that forward line. Braithwaite, Dalgard, possibly not, but they'll be a danger from set pieces. And with the exception of Belgium, who they have been well beaten by a couple of times over the last year, like they've pretty much done a job on everybody else and are scoring goals. So they look at a team coming into this with a lot of confidence, massive amounts of experience in there as well. And with that draw, I wouldn't be at all surprised to see them, certainly quarterfinals, maybe even a semi-final for Denmark.
I still remember the days when we celebrated when Ireland got drawn against Denmark in a World Cup qualifier. What days they were when we thought that Ireland were actually better than Denmark. But, you know, they have taken a step forward since then, in fairness. Your young player to watch?
I'm going to go for Daniel Malen of the Netherlands. Has had a brilliant season at PSV Eindhoven, got to nearly 30 goals. He's still only 22. Last season, his first season, I think he scored 5 goals. I remember commentating him on the Europa League with PSV, and he was exceptional. Just the raw pace that he had and the havoc he could cause in defences. He just scored 5 goals. I remember going into one of those matches against Vitesse in the one game, and then he picked up a knee injury towards the end of the season, but came back, has played all this season. As I say, nearly 30 goals at 22 for PSV. Looks as though he's going to force his way into the starting team. You can't go with Luke de Jong up front ahead of him, surely. But if they have a front three of Steven Berghuis, Memphis Depay, and Daniel Malen, I think he could do a lot of damage. Do you know what he is, Owen? He's the type of player that if he has a good Euros, you'd say, the type of player Arsenal might spend 50 million quid on. And then you've got to remember, actually, Arsenal just let him go 3 years ago.
Also, David Moyes.
In the youth team.
David Moyes has been singing the praises of Daniel Malen over the last couple of weeks. So West Ham going to prove that they're a bigger club than Arsenal Football Club, and they're going to go in and swoop.
It's a difficult thing, the young player, compared to where it was a few years ago, because you look at the young player list, and actually it's not that dissimilar from the player of the tournament list. Like an awful lot of these young players are ready. They're not coming in, emerging into the tournament. The Phil Fodens, Kylian Mbappe. It's like, these guys are the best players in the world right now. They're not the kids anymore.
Yeah, and that's for sure. Kylian Mbappe, the young player to watch, basically, is the undertone here. He's going to be big, that guy. It is 6 minutes past 9, and all this week on OTB AM, we'll be bringing you the chance to win a €150 Expert Electrical voucher with thanks to the good folks over at Expert Electrical, your home for large screen TVs this summer. It's a sporting summer at Expert, and you can find your perfect television on expert.ie or in their 67 stores nationwide. We will have a voucher winner every morning, and then one of those lucky winners will also have the chance to win a 55-inch Philips TV if their name is picked out of the hat on this Saturday's Off the Ball. To be in with a chance to win, just name this morning's mystery voice.
And I think you black out a bit when you hear the bad news, and I'd never been dropped before, so...
Let's get that one more time.
And I think you black out a bit when you hear the bad news, and I'd never been dropped before, so...
So it's €150 and a chance to win a 55-inch Philips TV on the line. You can tweet us your answer at Off the Ball. We'll be back after this quick break with Dubs legend Bernard Brogan.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
The Football Pod with Paddy and Andy, our new weekly Gaelic football show with Paddy Andrews and Andy Moran.
I signed with the Rod squad in 2011, that summer. Do you know, like you hear, I signed in the back of the smoke pack. Roddy, I would say, is like the Irish Harry Redknapp. We lost that championship game against Donegal. We didn't lose a game for 7 years after that. I tell you, we were angry after that game. Dublin came back, I remember, in 2015. It was, we're putting this right.
Download the OTB Sports app and subscribe to the GAA podcast feed now.
Why not check out the Boyle Sports betting app for the latest betting and stats on every player and team with the Boyle Sports Euro Stats Centre. Rated 4.5 stars on the App Store, you'll find all our latest odds and offers for the Euros. So remind us where to go, Stevie G.
Boyle Sports. This is betting.
18 plus, bet responsibly, gamblingcare.ie.
Car insurance is boring, but you don't have to be. Get Set Go is the kind of car insurance you can sort in a few minutes online, then bounce on with your day. Are you ready for Quick Start Insurance? Get a quote now at getsetgo.ie. MCL Insurance Services Ireland Limited, trading as getsetgo.ie, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Okay, it is 9 minutes past 9, and delighted to say that Bernard Brogan's autobiography, The Hill with Kieran Shannon, is available in paperback from tomorrow, June the 10th. Delighted to welcome Bernard back to the show. Bernard, how are you getting on?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
All good. I presume over the course of the last year or so, there's been more people picking up the book, maybe after Christmas and all that, and having a chat about some of the things that you bared in the book, a little bit of your soul in there and some personal details.
differently, and obviously the year that I was in it, shops and closes like that. It was kind of the momentum built slowly over the year, but it was great to get so much positive feedback. You know, I did want to tell a story, but also keep the confidence of the team as well. So I hope I've done that. I haven't seen many of them because we've been in COVID, but it's actually 10 years since Dublin won the All-Ireland 2011. So there's a WhatsApp group there going around to try and organise a few pints at some stage. I'm not sure what we'll organise, but we'll get a pint in somewhere.
So, like, does Cluxton show up to that? Does James McCarthy show up to that? Does Philly show up to that? What about the current lads from 2011?
Yeah, we'll do a post-championship to give those lads the opportunity. Obviously, they're a bigger part, if not the biggest part of that group. But yeah, like, it's all the old guards, the Eamon Fennells and Mossy and Pat Gilroy and all the old guards organising. So I'm looking forward to catching up and reminiscing. It's mad how 10 years moves very fast, but it should be a bit of fun.
Jeez, Bernard, all the hours of effort yourself and Kieran Shannon put into that book, and then Paddy Andrews comes along on a podcast and reveals all the secrets of the dressing rooms in half an hour.
Yeah, he's loose lips, that fella. When you get him into a comfortable position, but he's a hilarious character, and I've been enjoying watching him on him and Andy, two cool characters. But Paddy's a storyteller, and Shannon Key, as we say. He's one of the greatest lads you'd ever bring for a pint or two. So I'm sure you'll be looking to get him and Andy out for a couple of pints when the pubs are now open. So that should be on the cards for the next couple of weeks.
How much do you try and keep in touch with that group of players? Like, would you be closer to Paddy Andrews than, say, somebody who would still be in the squad? Does there just have to be that natural distance with players who are still going?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of an unwritten rule that obviously you step away from the WhatsApp group. You keep in touch with them, see how they're doing. Obviously, some of them are very good pals, and they're all friends in one way. And we've created a bond that will be there forever. When you win All Ireland, you know. But yeah, you kind of, as people kind of fall off the chopping block or make a decision, kind of come into the group of the rest of us washed up players, you know. But I think it's just naturally, you especially when you're doing media, you're talking, you're doing different things. You don't want people to feel as if they're talking to you and something else has been said. So you kind of just leave them at it while they're playing ball, and then whenever they decide to finish up, kind of bring them into the WhatsApp group, the old players, and try and organise a few things, they say.
Players often say that they don't really miss the early part of the season. It's only when the weather gets a bit warmer, the pitches get a bit firmer, that they really miss playing. I guess we didn't really have that at any point last year, so maybe you got off scot-free last year. But are you missing it now, Bernard, not being involved with the Dubs?
Yeah. Look, it's you're dead right. It's been a funny year and a half since I retired. It's nearly been easier to be retired than to be slogging for months and months and not knowing where the finish line is, you know. So I wasn't feeling sorry for myself last year and even in the early parts of this year. But absolutely, when the sun comes out and the ground hardens up, obviously it took us a while to get the summer going in Ireland this year, but it's just beautiful out there. We went for a few runs last night. Ross McConnell, one of my good pals, and obviously all Dublin comrades. And just the ground was beautiful. We strike a few balls. You have to be careful of the hamstrings because we haven't been kicking too much. But it's just really going to be an epic summer. It's going to just come fast and furiously. I think it's going to be really exciting. But I'd say, for me personally, I think once I start seeing the games, those games in Croke Park, once we start going to the games, that's when it's really going to pinch me. I feel when I go into Croke Park and walk through the fans and share a story or two, and then sit in the stand and look down at the lads on the bench, and probably where I spent my last couple of years, but just been part of the group. It was just amazing. Obviously stayed there as long as I could until I could stay no more. So I think that'll be the true test of what it emotionally feels for me when I'm in there watching the guys and just not being part of the group.
Do you have a desire or any desire yet, Bernard, to get back involved in the inter-county game? Obviously, in your professional life with Pep Talk, you do a lot around team building and high performance and getting the best out of people. Do you feel that you're ready to offer something to a senior inter-county setup?
I'm not sure. I would have said no over the last number of years when I was finishing up. Obviously, I've got two young babies, twins at home that are keep me very busy. So I have a busy life and busy in work with Legacy and Pep Talk, as you say. But I do kind of like passing that kind of nuggets on. I always like talking to I make a phone call yesterday to a lad, Carl, in Galway, who from Tomb Stars, a rising star, to this cruciate, you know. And and I was delighted to actually be asked to make a call and try and cheer him up. And he's a guy that did his knee, and I got asked to do them from time to time, and got asked to talk to a team. And I do enjoy kind of giving my experience, and I feel I got something to add or something with a bit of value to say. So the more I do that, the more maybe I drift away from that playing team. And as time moves on, it probably will be something I'll do, whether I go through the club ranks or whether I go into inter-county. I look at Darren Daly and Butsy, and my good pal who's in the backroom team with Desi now. It's a very big commitment, as you know, for a player. It's even a bigger commitment for management. They have to do the meetings before training and then in their own time to pick teams, and then they have to show up and be there with the players for all of their hours, which are extensive. So it's a phenomenal commitment for the team management at inter-county, all teams. So I'm not sure if I had that free time, but it's definitely something that more I kind of throw nuggets at people and amass things. I think it's something that maybe is bubbling away in my belly, I think.
There probably is a competitive aspect to it all as well, Bernard. There maybe just a void there that naturally comes from not being involved with the Dubs all the time that will eventually need to be filled. Are you starting to feel that itch at all, even just as a pure competitor at the moment?
Yeah, I think so. And I think you probably don't understand the experience you picked up or the little bits of ideas you might have strategically in a game. Another interesting call from a pal of mine, Vinny Perth in New York, who's managed the Donna Rossa ladies team in the Bronx in New York, and he was bringing them into their first league game last weekend. And he was asking me about, he's a soccer player, played for Ireland underage, won an All-Ireland with him in soccer. And he was asking about some of the rules. He said, in the half-back line, when we push up, and I was saying, keep them on a string and go left and go right, and don't jump out of the line if you're playing defence. And I was like, geez, I actually feel like I actually know something about this, you know what I mean? So that, again, like another small example of just that itch kind of been scratched a bit. So the more that happens, maybe the more I want to get back in and maybe try and add some value to the team.
You'll regret this, Bernard, because this is starting to sound very like Bernard sitting at home a little bit bored. Give him a call. If you want advice for your club team, you want the expertise of Bernard Brogan, he is free.
I'm going to do a column, a little phone line, helpline for your defensive woes in football or your attacking prowess.
On a purely football level, Bernard, obviously you said that you're missing it when the sun comes out and the ground gets harder, but this year in particular, you must be looking at some of the fun the forwards are having in the National League and thinking, Jesus, I'd love to be out there.
Yeah, and I think the game is evolving back into a bit of a kick. I know it's still a set defence and stuff like that, but you look the way Kerry are playing, and they're trying to find Clifford in the forward line. They're kicking passes into him, and Sean O'Shea gets it. He's looking for him. I love that. It reminded me of my early days in 2009-10 when I chatted to Paul Flynn about it the other day. He was actually saying how the game as it evolved didn't help the likes of himself. He loves getting the ball, turning and putting it the outside of the boot across field, and then coming in and coming on the run and shooting from distance. When the game evolved into a controlling game where you had to go left and right and control and then have dash runners through the middle, the Jack McCaffreys of this world, it didn't suit his game. It didn't suit me. I preferred to get a ball kicked in long, have a one-on-one or even have a one-on-one with a sweeper around you and just trying to get a yard of space to take that kick. And I see Kerry doing that. And I see them going for Clifford and trying to give him the ball, and the others inside. Gives them an opportunity to have a one-on-one, and when they get it, obviously they're lethal. I'd love to see Dublin do a little bit of that, more of that, as in focus on trying to get a ball to Con and to Cormac Costello and whoever's inside with guys. If Dean comes back, and he will come back. But he just shows how dangerous they are when Cormac Costello gets the ball in a bit of space or with a one-on-one. He has the balance to move, and if Con gets it, he takes on a man and goes straight head down for goal. It's just beautiful. And it's just the forward play that I love. Probably lost a bit of it in the latter years because of the way the game evolved. But seeing glimpses of that football coming back, which is really exciting for me over the summer to watch that. And I think Kerry are trying to lead the way, and other teams as well. That forward kind of bit of space. Cork are doing a bit of it. Donegal are doing a bit of it, where they're getting the ball into space, and lads are getting a chance to play football in the forward line. The forward line is becoming non-existent. Well, in my eye, at some stage. Maybe it's just me. I ran out of legs to be able to run back and then join the attack again. But I think I'm really excited about what's in store for the forward play this summer.
is it going to be something that we see in the long term? Because like it does seem that maybe there's a hybrid version that might actually be the eventual destination, where someone like Niall Scully's influence is still massive on this Dublin team this year. Like, I think he was man of the match in that game against Kerry, for example. But in the very same game, they got route one to Conor O'Callaghan, which I'm sure was a ball that you would have loved to have won in your playing days early on. So they're trying to combine those two things, it seems, when it comes to Dublin at least.
Yeah, like you have to evolve, you have to move. Like Dublin, I remember in Pat's time, then Jim's early time, every training session, we played six forwards and probably 8 or 9 or 10 defenders because of the defensive way the game was going. The game is evolving. Teams are looking at the way Dublin play. Teams are looking at the way Kerry play, and they're coming up with different ways of doing it. And Dublin and other teams have come up with a way of beating that mass defence, of getting through that line, of getting the ball over the defenders and winning games. So it's just not. It's not a way to beat the Dubs. So you have to come at them with different ways and different ideas. So that affords different dynamic in Dublin's play and other teams. I think that's the exciting bit. It's the evolution of the game. I think the game, like I spoke to Ty Kennelly, obviously, in our podcast there before Christmas, and he spoke to me about post that a couple of chats with him. He's saying about in the AFL, and we followed a lot of the tactical and strategies that the AFL have done in years after them. He said it's the full press. It's where the AFL is. And I watched the grand final last year, and I was surprised at just how manic it was. And it was like under 10s where everyone goes to the ball, and everyone goes to the ball, and everyone goes to the corner, and they follow around these numbers. And I think that's the way the game's going to go, where we're doing a bit of it, and Dublin have done it for a while, and other teams have, where you're pressing the kick out. And I think that press up the field is going to be much stronger, where obviously the kick out becomes so important. That's why Cluxton's influence in the game is so big. But I believe that teams are whether they do it or not, but I think the way to the next evolution of the game is really pressing the ball. And I don't mean just the full forward line pressing the play, the full back line. I mean the whole team from cornerback to half back, moving a line up the pitch and really condensing the pitch, and all of those, and then moving in pockets that way. I think that's a way that I believe the game will evolve. It hasn't gotten there yet, but if you watch a bit of the AFL, that's the way they're playing. And I actually think that they're a game of statistics and possessions and mileage. I think we've seen a bit of it in glimpses, and I think that's the way I'd set up if I was looking at a Dublin team, and looking at how we break down teams and evolve. I would be looking at that really defensive, so not a zonal press, a full press, like in basketball, where everyone presses and then everyone comes back, and I think that would be something I think we might see a bit of over the summer.
Is that how Mayo played against Dublin in 16 and 17?
Yeah, they pressed up, didn't fully go all the way, obviously for obvious reasons, as you can't leave your offensive unit, needs to stay. But I think that next step of half forwards squeezing and helping their full forwards, the midfield coming up into the half forward line, the half backs coming to midfield, because what happens is when you press with half-heartedly and full forward line presses, Killian O'Connor, these guys are some of the best tacklers, as Paul Mannion is with the Dubs. There was some of your best tacklers in your first line defence, your full forward line. But if you don't help them, an easy pop ball over the top, or someone comes into space, you have to defend the next player. So I always say to people, and when I'm talking to the club team, don't worry about the man. Let me, if I'm a full forward line, tackle the man, and when he gets by me, that's on me. I'll chase him down the pitch, or Nesty, or whoever. But it's the next guy. It's up to you as the team member to make sure that you don't give my man an out ball. So that means that the halfback have to pull up, or the other side of the pitch have to come across. And I think there's a domino effect of that. And I think that if you fully press up the pitch, the reward, it's like Liverpool soccer has been doing, and Liverpool did it when they had at their best a couple of years ago. We all know they're taught their high press with the front three they had, and the team all pressed with them, and they got massive rewards. And then when you don't do it fully, as you've seen this year, maybe didn't just have the intensity, falls away. But when you're at top of your game, at top of your pump, and everyone is working at that unit, there's real reward in that. I think that's something.
It's strange, Bernard, that it's taken teams 3-4 years to follow that example, because you used the word chaos there in the AFL, and like the thing that stands out from 16 and 17 finals was that they were very chaotic games. Whereas a lot of teams against Dublin seem to be, well, we will set up with our own game plan, let them have possession of the ball, and hope that Dublin somehow turn it over or make a mistake, which we know with this Dublin team, they rarely, if ever, do. But that actually going with a high press, trying to put a bit of chaos into the game, may well be actually the only way you can upset Dublin.
Yeah, like, well, you have to do something different. They're a phenomenal team, and they're evolving. You know, that's the magic of this team, and obviously I was part of it for a long time, and it was always an evolution, always looking at how we can do things differently, because if you stand still, you go backwards, and Jim was like that, and I know Desi, I'm sure Desi is of the same mindset. I know he had a lot of those lads at under 21 as well, and he have a similar mindset. So they are evolving, so teams need to evolve with that, and all teams are, but Patch Dublin, who are out there, teams need to do something different. I think setting up as a mass defence, Dublin have proved that they can find a way through that, and with strike runners, every team is doing it. Teams all over the country that have figured out ways of breaking down the mass defence, because the game has been playing it for 10 years. You say 10 years since 2011, 2012, like that was the years that Donegal started this, and Tyrone's this world. So a long time around, and managers have been coming up with strategies to break it. So there's a different style of football needed, I feel, to be competitive in this championship this year.
Yeah, and the evolution has been really enjoyable. One thing I wanted to ask you about, Bernard, was the forward that is impressing you the most at the moment. And it's kind of sometimes very hard to ask this question, because some forwards play in much better teams, and it's hard to quantify this. So I'll put it to you this way. If you were starting a new Gaelic football franchise and you had the first pick in a draft and you had to pick a forward, which current Gaelic footballer would you pick?
Clifford. I love all the Dublin players, the forwards, they would be in my team. But I just think, see the package that Clifford is bringing, and the cool for such a young man to be so calm. I think he still has a bit to learn in his game. He gets a bit too involved. He gets a bit too excited at times. He doesn't need to do that. But his balance is left and right, and it's just his confidence. I think that's what great players are. They have that confidence. You look at Con, you look at Cormac Costello, they're so cool on the ball. Clifford is just, he has that size and he has that ball winning ability, and obviously has an eye for goal. Like, he's a complete footballer, and I'm looking forward to watching over summer. And I just love the way Kerry are supporting his strengths, strengthening his strengths. They're getting him the ball, they're allowing him time. He's working hard. Like, to be successful in this game, you have to be a hard worker, and then you get the rewards from it. So it's not about just waiting inside, as I did sometimes. But when I actually worked hard, it's when I played my best football. So he's a hard worker, and he's running hard to get on the ball. So he's one that I just think is, as you say, when I'm looking for someone to look forward to watch over the summer, I'm looking forward to watching Clifford. See can he continue his form. I always look at how teams set up against players like that. How do they mark them? How do they tactically try and slow them down? Obviously, I was always trying to do the opposite to teams in my day, and I've had different tactics against me. So I'd be interested to see what way teams set up, trying to put a bit of cold water on his team.
Well, I was just about to ask, actually, that you've obviously seen up close what a modern cornerback will try and do to you. It seems that Clifford maybe has a bit of an edge, and obviously he got sent off against Tyrone last year in the league. That spilled over at times, but he's put on a bit of bulk this year as well, and allied with that age, that mentality that he has, he can probably handle what any cornerback is going to throw at him, it seems so far.
Yeah, and as I said, what I think he should learn is that he doesn't need to get involved in that. Like, I for a long time, I had loads of defenders pulling and dragging out of me and trying to rise me up. And I just let it bounce off me, you know what I mean? And then it stops, and then they ignore it, and they just try and beat you playing football, you know what I mean? And the odd punch comes in, but because when you get excited like that, and that happened to me a couple of times, and I learned quickly, your emotions go up, the blood rises, it's nearly get dizzy when you get into those heightened state of a row or a drag match, or you're in the middle of it. It just throws you off your game so long. Hence why defenders are trying to do it to you. Throws you off your game, takes you out of your comfort zone, takes you out of your focus. So it actually does nothing for a full forward line to engage with that. I would be strongly opposed to forwards of that calibre getting involved in that. Not that here, I know he's getting pulled and dragged, and it's frustrating, and you're trying to play a game, and the refs are blaming him, and you're kind of saying, how refs can say, give a yellow card to two players and roll around the ground. I always wonder, saying, ref, I'm a forward here. I'm trying to get out in front of my man to get on the ball. Do I actually want to be rolling around the ground with this fella here? So refs, a bit of it is on the refs to protect our players like that and make sure that they're and the linesmen more so, or the umpires, to keep an eye on that you allow our talented players space and time. Obviously, within the rules, you can knock lumps out of them, but I think he's a complete footballer, and he's still so much to offer. So I'm looking forward to watching him over the summer.
We should ask Bernard before we let you go. Do we think we're going to be having the same conversation in 12 months' time about can the Dubs be stopped, or do you think it might happen this year?
Just such a strange year, you know. It's going to be soft tissue injuries as we go. Disappointing not to see. Well, don't know yet, but if Dublin and Kerry can't play in the league final, which is a disappointing one that I would have really enjoyed if they both won their game. I think is that correct, that they can't beat Kerry out in the 26th. So that's one that would have been lovely. Obviously, they have to get over Donegal and Tyrone. No mean feats, but I think the way that the year is going to go is it's going to be Dublin are going to be thereabouts. There's no question about it. I don't think they meet Kerry until very late in the summer if they do get there. So it'll be nip and tuck. I think you can see seen from the league game. It's Kerry are well able to score. I think their defence, Dublin's forward unit might be just a little bit strong for their defence, but on a big day, anything is possible, you know what I mean, and it will be close. And that's not to write off a Mayo or a Tyrone, a couple of young footballers that are exciting, and Donegal will always be hard to beat in a short summer, you know. So we had thought would show more early on. Obviously, they would hide from Kerry. Maybe that's a kick that they needed. Obviously, Comer to come back in. Shane Walsh looks like a Rolls Royce out there. He needs a bit of support. Yeah. So it's actually a really exciting summer of football coming. Dublin will be in the mix. They will be well controlled. They've got a panel that they can rely on if injuries happen. So hopefully we're in the decision this space of 12 months' time talking about Dublin's dominance, but a long way to go.
Bernard, it's been
That's
great.
the Kerry blood in him there, the bit of yearism of trying to, he's learned from the best there. Play it down.
Now that I'm on this side of the camera, I always kind of say, what would Tomás O'Shea say here now? How do I big up a Dublin player? So I spent the last 10 minutes...
Tomás O'Shea, where's me check?
The Hill. It is Bernard Brogan's autobiography. It is brilliant. You say you didn't give too much away in it. I certainly learned plenty from reading it. It's out now in paperback with Kieran Shannon, of course, from tomorrow, I should say, the 10th. So pick that up in all good bookstores. Bernard Brogan, brilliant stuff as ever. Thanks a million for joining us this morning.
Thanks, James, as always.
Cheers. Bernard Brogan there on the line. So that is pretty much our lot for OTB AM this morning. It has been live in association with Gillette's Good Morning Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Coming up on OTB Sports Radio throughout the day from 1 o'clock, we've got OTB Gold with Ray Boom Boom Mancini. We've got Nathan Murphy's Mount Rushmore of Mayo.
Stands the test of time.
It does stand the test. I was just about to ask. Good that you piped in there. At 4 o'clock then is a retro panel, Sport and the Rising. And then from 6 o'clock it is OTB Gold with Emmanuel Petit. Great interview there, which fairly timely ahead of France's quest as favourites to win the Euros from next week. We have a competition winner as well. Conor Layden, you have won a €150 expert electrical voucher, and you're going into the draw to win a 55-inch Philips TV this weekend. Tomorrow morning we are live from 7:30 here on OTB AM. Plenty of build up to the weekend's GAA, plenty of build up to the Euros coming your way as well. Right now though, and stay with us for this, if you missed this was brilliant last night. Eric Donovan chatting to Joe about Ireland's Olympic hopes and his take on Floyd Mayweather's performance on Sunday night.
Now we'll turn to boxing. So 7 Irish boxers have qualified for Tokyo Olympic qualifiers on in Paris at the moment. I'm sure you've seen over the past number of days. Kurt Walker and Brendan Irvine were already qualified. So over the past few days, Kelly Harrington in top form. She won gold today at the qualifying event. She'll probably be top seed in her division. We have the 30-year-old Dub Emmett Brennan joining. We have the Antrim-based brother and sister Aidan and Michaela Walsh. And we have 23-year-old Aoife O'Rourke as well. So pretty good haul. Eric Donovan is with us. Hey, Eric.
Hi, Joe. How are you?
Yeah, very well. Maybe just big picture first, and then we'll ask about some of the individuals. I think the most Ireland qualified before was 8 at Rio. Obviously, Michael O'Reilly failed his drugs test, and so only 7 fought. Does 7 this time around represent a big success, or what were the realistic targets?
Oh, I think it's a huge success, Joe. To be honest with you, looking at the way the world went with the whole kind of COVID situation, tournaments falling by the wayside, cancellations, and then the Irish team just having one kind of last chance saloon. We sent over 9 boxers. One of those was already qualified, Brendan Irvine. So the best possible outcome we could have got was 8, and we qualified 5 out of the 8. Now, if you had to offer that to any Irish boxing person before they left out, they would have broke your hand for it. They really would. Right. So all in all, we've 7 going to the games, and I think the Irish Amateur Boxing Association, the high performance team, will be very pleased with that.
Yes, because I suppose we were all worried in many ways when Billy Walsh departed, this thing might go off a cliff. So clearly that hasn't happened anyway.
No, and the one good thing about Irish boxing is, you know, we're a very proud boxing nation. We have a very good, rich kind of a heritage with it, and you know, at the grassroots level, all over this country, you know, there's a great passion for it, you know, and so what I'm saying is that there's always a huge uptake, especially in an Olympic year as well. You know, the numbers will always increase in clubs and membership, but you know, there's a conveyor belt of talent there, and all they need is to have a proper system in place. And when Billy left that time, it did kind of put a little bit of fear into, you know, people were worried, they were concerned about, you know, will we be able to get back to those heights again, you know, because the talent is there. We have good people in boxing. It just need to have good leadership, good kind of organisation skills, and a unity. We need to work together, because there has been too much, how would you say, controversy between the high performance and the IABA and then Sport Ireland and all of that, and that's not good. There's so much disharmony. You know, when we work together, when we come together and we work as a team and a unit, the talent is there, and you know, it's no surprise why we're the number 1 Olympic sport in this country, you know, because the talent is there, and I think we have a very good chance. Another thing that jumps out at me there as well is you look at the female boxing, the female representatives on the team. We've 4 male qualified, 3 female, and that's the first time now we've had you know, multiple female boxers going to the Olympic Games since obviously Katie Taylor. So we've a very strong female team going out that I think would be more tipped to medal than, well, stronger favourites anyways to tip for medals than the male team. But look, all in all, everyone has a great chance going out there.
Well, we start with Kelly Harrington then on that front. So she beat Caroline Dubois from Great Britain, and that should, Eric, I'm reading, guarantee her top seeding at the Games. That sounds like a pretty good position to be in. How important is top seeding at the Olympics?
I think it's very important, because like if you look at even the fight that Kelly, you know, a lot of the eyes of the world were on Kelly versus Hamadouche, who's a former, current reigning professional boxing champion. And it's very rare that you would get the opportunity to see a world amateur champion versus a world professional champion, you know, and we got that. There was a lot of eyes on that fight to see what would happen. And, you know, Kelly is an expert in the three round field of amateur boxing, and Hamadouche is a world champion, and you know that's over 10 rounds. So when the World Amateur Association allowed professionals to come back in, there was a lot of amateurs weren't happy about that, because they were thinking that, you know, these guys could be either, you know, they're being paid, a lot of them are getting good money, good endorsements, paid to fight and box, and it could be dangerous or whatever. So there was a lot of people, a lot of eyes watching that fight, and sure enough, Kelly, with her superior amateur skills, schooled her over the 3 rounds. But you got, you know, if you were watching the fight, if there was another 3 rounds, the tide would have changed, and it would have turned into Hamadouche's favour. But it's not. It's an amateur game. It's over 3 rounds. Fundamentally, they're the same sports, but they're very different. But it's over 3 rounds, and that's where Kelly is, you know, far superior, and she got the job done. But anyway, going back to that point, Hamadouche is a very strong opponent. She will learn a lot from that fight. She will be, you know, you want to watch out for her in the Olympic Games. Mira Potkonen, who has a couple of wins over Kelly Harrington already. 2 or 3 times she's beaten Kelly. She's the Finnish boxer, and she's also that boxer who stopped Katie Taylor in the Rio Olympic Games, stopped, you know, in that quarter-final bout. The lady who Kelly beat in the final of this tournament, Dubois, which is the younger sister of Daniel Dubois, who we all know, who's involved in that controversial fight that time with Joe Joyce.
Yeah,
and it just shows the pedigree.
We were just talking about him a couple of weeks back, where his eye was bust open and he ended the fight, took the knee in the fight, and got criticism for it. So she's his sister, his okay, right?
Sister. So you can see the stock. It's good pedigree there as well. Like big good boxing family, But Dubois beat Potkonen, and then Kelly beat Dubois. So like what I'm saying is there's a lot of strong fighters in this weight category, but the fact that Kelly got the number 1 seed is huge, because she'll avoid all these top dogs, so to speak, until at least the medal stages. So Kelly is a huge candidate for a medal in these Olympic Games. Probably our best chance going out there, I would say.
Okay, so she didn't have that top seeding. You'd be worried about her facing a difficult opponent early doors, and that won't happen now.
Well, yeah, you would be worried. But look, it all boils down to coming into form at the right time. And Kelly's just after winning this tournament. She's after beating some really top-class opposition. And she's come through a lot of challenges, Kelly, over the last while. She broke her hand, injury threatened, whether she would even make the Olympic team, and in some ways the COVID and the postponement might have worked in Kelly's favour, but she's coming into form right now, and that's something all athletes try and do every 4 years. They try and peak for that one moment in their life, and thankfully the Irish boxing team seems to be hitting a good spark of form.
Yeah, it's great. So like, to do a blunt kind of potted history of Kelly Harrington's last couple of years: 2018 world champion, then 2019 that wrist injury that you mentioned, and then 2020 is the pandemic. So maybe the hope is she's recapturing her World Championship winning 2018 form just in time.
Yeah, like if you look at the female team, Michaela Walsh, Kelly Harrington, Aoife O'Rourke, over the last 4 years, well, especially with Michaela Walsh, in particular Walsh and Harrington, they've been consistently standing on the podium at major championships. We call them majors, the Worlds, the Europeans and Olympic Games. Obviously, they've never been to Olympic Games, but Worlds and Europeans, these have been medaling consistently over the last year. So if they continue in the same form, then they should stand on the podium at Olympic Games. It's not as easy as that, though, Sure. But like, if they can keep up the same consistency that they're doing, then they would be strong favourites to step on the podium again. Obviously, the Olympic Games has that added pressure. The whole world is watching the status of the event, the biggest sporting platform in the world, and it only comes around every so often. But the good news for us is, like I said, they are hitting a bit of form. Aoife O'Rourke's only 23 years old, right? European champion from 2019. Obviously, everybody had a quiet year in 2020. There was nothing happening. So she's European champion now, and she boxed against the Belarusian Wozniak Elizabeta Wozniak. Okay, now she lost the first round. Aoife O'Rourke lost the first round, and 90% of boxers who lose the first round in amateur boxing lose the fight. And she showed great mental strength to turn it around, because the judges like to be on the winning side, of the result in the end. All the judges they don't like to be on the losing side, basically. They want to be going exactly the way the fight is being scored. But for them to kind of change tact, like for Aoife O'Rourke to kind of, grab that fight, and turn it around, shows great mental strength for a 23-year-old woman. She's a late starter of boxing as well. So I would say she's a dark horse, and I would give her a good chance.
So she is a late starter, is she, at 23? Because I was just doing the maths here and thinking, well, God, she was looking on as a teenager as Katie Taylor was winning in 2012. Like, it's hard not to draw the line from Katie Taylor to all these young fighters coming through. So she started a bit late, Aoife O'Rourke.
Yeah, she did. She was a late starter. But you're right, and the likes of Michaela Walsh and Kelly Harrington would have been on the team, so to speak, with Katie Taylor. But obviously Katie was just that little bit, I wouldn't say like a little bit ahead, but she was internationally, she was kind of a bit ahead of these girls. But Kelly Harrington and Walsh would have, they would have been on the heels of Katie Taylor. There was huge talk one time of Kelly Harrington fighting Katie Taylor, actually if Katie Taylor stuck around. But obviously Katie had other plans and turned professional. And Kelly Harrington has taken the mantle now, so she is now the kind of trailblazer for women's boxing in Ireland. And she is really stepping up to the plate as well. She's a world silver medalist, world champion. So, she is a super chance going out here.
Yeah, I guess Aoife O'Rourke would have been 14 when Katie Taylor was winning in 2012. It's hard not to think that had some kind of an effect, you know, and here we are nearly a decade later. So on Michaela Walsh, I mean, this was an amazing story over the weekend. We had Michaela Walsh, who's 28, and then her brother Aidan, Antrim-based, both qualifying for Tokyo in the space of kind of 45 minutes of one another. Michaela's just lost her gold medal match this evening to Irma Testa of Italy. So she's 28, the brother Aidan is 24. You mentioned, I think, in keeping with all the female boxers, she is number 2 seed, I think she's expected to be at Tokyo, which will be obviously very advantageous. Probably a better chance of a medal than Aidan, but I mean, still remarkable for the family to have brother and sister going to the same games.
Isn't it a great story, Joe? It's just a brilliant story, you know, brother and sister, siblings, you know, that, you know, qualified for the Tokyo Olympic Games. Imagine how proud that family feels. They come from a very, you know, proud boxing family. Their father has been coaching them for years and years. But, you know, Michaela Walsh, she's been producing over the last while. So there's been no real surprise there that she's making this Olympic Games. She was an Olympic candidate, and actually she's a candidate for a medal now as well. So she's, I would say, a very close second to Kelly Harrington. You know, if I was putting them in medal kind of positions, very close second to Kelly Harrington to pick up a medal for us. But her brother Aidan Walsh, 2 or 3 years ago, he would have been the number three select from Ireland. You know, you wouldn't, like, there was 2 or 3 lads that were definitely ahead of him, the likes of you know, Paddy Donovan, Kieran Malloy, these type of guys. But he kept grafting away and believing in himself. And he's after developing at a serious rate, and just something is after changing in him. There's a belief in him now. When he gets ahead on you, if he wins the first round, or if he gets a lead on you at all, very hard guy to beat. You know, he's very, very clever, counter puncher, good footwork, and only 24 years of age. He's an outside chance. Like, it's just wonderful to see. And I think the confidence that his sister speaks with, have you ever heard Michaela Walsh speak in an interview or anything? She has that kind of, there's a sheer kind of it's not an arrogance, there's just a conviction in her. You know, there's this conviction when she speaks about, you know, and she's been around a long time. She boxed Nicola Adams in the 2014 Commonwealth Games. Nicola Adams, you might remember, was the first ever female Olympic champion. She was the flyweight. Katie Taylor was the next one in the London Olympic Games. She's the Great Britain representative. So Michaela Walsh has been around a long time, mixing it with the best. When she talks, you know, she talks with conviction, and she's a true champion. And I'm sure all of that has rubbed off on her brother as well, and he's definitely stepping up to the plate now, and rightly so. It's a wonderful news story for them, and I think they're going to have a great Olympic Games.
Okay, great. And that's not to mention Emmett Brennan. So Emmett Brennan is 30 years of age. He's a dub. He came through against Lyndon Nuha of Sweden. And this was in a box-off. This was real. I mean, you're talking about these Parisian qualifiers in the grand scheme of things is like last chance saloon for a lot of these fighters. I mean, for Emmett Brennan, this was classic. It comes down to this fight, whether you're going to the Olympics or not, at 30 years of age. And his story, I'm sure it resonates with you in some ways. His story is not a straightforward success all the way route through to Tokyo at all. I think he was either gave up the sport at one stage or was certainly thinking about it.
Yeah, Emmett Brennan's story is a real fairy tale story in all of this. You know, he's, you know, he comes from the inner city Dublin. He's been grafting all of his life, you know, in amateur boxing, and he's a really exemplary kind of an athlete, or, you know, a boxer. You know, he'd be the kind of person you would use as an example to never ever give up, never stop chasing your dreams. He won the elite championships in 2017 for the very first time, and then 2018 he injured his hand, so he was out. And then 2019 he came back and won the elites again, but stepped up into light heavyweight division when Joe Ward turned professional. You know, and in that 2019 he took out, would you believe, I read an article recently, he had no funding. There was no funding, no backing up until this year. He was given the international amount of funding this year from Sport Ireland, which is 12,000. Not a lot, but look, it helps.
No.
But he took out a loan from the credit union, Joe, in 2019 for himself, to fund himself, to fund his training plan, to fund his training camps, so he could make the Tokyo Olympic Games. Now, that's what you call taking a punt on yourself, you know? Right. That's what you call backing yourself. Now, the stress of trying to qualify for Olympic Games is enough, but without having the financial pressures of it as well on top of that.
Yeah.
But I love that story. You know, he decided that, you know, I'm not going to, you know, I'm not just doing this for the sake of doing it. I'm doing it and I'm going all in. I'm taking a loan. I'm going to back myself. And he got his shot and he took it. You know, he took it. And what a story. Fantastic story. And he's going to really be a dark horse too, you know, because not a lot of people know much about him. No international. Him and Aidan Walsh haven't gotten much international experience. They're the two first boxers since Adam Nolan to qualify for an Olympic Games without ever stepping on a podium at a major championships.
Wow. God, that's an amazing story. 30 years of age. Could be life-changing for him, you know, could become a household name and, well, make his few quid back for the credit union for a start. It does kind of show you, though, how difficult it is to get funding. I mean, he was clearly good enough to go, and we had Micheál Martin in the studio. I was bringing up this issue when you look at how we spend money on lots of different things, and here was somebody who had the talent to go, and he can't seem to get a penny off the state for far too long. And even Micheál Martin made the point, you'd love if we could almost get in ahead of the success and back them in advance, as opposed to, you know, I'm sure he'll get some funding, obviously, to take him through to the Olympics now and maybe beyond. I don't know. I mean, look, I get it when they haven't been on a podium, but you just wish we could identify a few who have the potential and maybe get in there and make it that bit easier for them.
Yeah, it's a real kind of, there's an irony to it, or there's a paradox to it. Like, if you win, if you get to the top of the podium, we'll fund you.
Sure.
You know, but why not fund me and help me get to the top of the podium? Like, for 7 years, I represented Ireland for the first time in 2003 at elite level, at senior level. And 7 years later, I win the European bronze, you know. But for that 7 years, it was tough. It was very, very tough financially on me. Then I got to the top, and then I got the big funding. But then I picked up injury. There was other few things that went against me, and I didn't really hold on to the top funding for very long, basically. But when I got that top funding, then there was huge pressure on me to hold on to it. You know, it's kind of it's a very pressurized situation, but it goes against the kind of ethos of having somebody to support you and back you. Yes. It's like, if you get to the top, we'll pay you we'll give you the money. But you know, like, the whole point should be, here, we believe in you, we're going to fund you this amount, and we're going to help you to get to the top. You know, that's the way it should be. Yeah. I think.
And, well, it's funny, I mean, I don't know why it's not that way. Even the Taoiseach of the country was saying as much. We have to support potential as well. It can't just be about the established stars of today. You've got to support the potential for tomorrow. And so, for instance, between 2003 and 2010, how much per annum might you have got in a given year across those years?
The maximum I got was 12,000. Okay. I was under 12,000.
So that won't go far. You're either working or you're looking for sponsorship to keep the show on the road, really.
Yeah, and as one guy said, one athlete who I won't mention, a boxer who was looking for, who asked the supermarket for sponsorship for to try and qualify for the Olympic Games, and the supermarket said to him, "What do you want, a ham or a turkey?"
Yeah. Well, I think Billy Walsh always made the point, you know, corporate Ireland could do a lot more for the boxers. Don't seem to attract sponsorship. So, anyway.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, you know, because I'm only in the... Well, I don't want to write myself off, but I know I'm in the final stages of my own career. But I was lucky enough to attract a huge corporate company in Bearing recently, you know, and they like my story. They like what I've been doing, and I've been doing a lot of online workouts with those staff throughout the lockdowns, and they've come on board as one of my sponsors. You know, I've a few more sponsors as well, but I'm just saying it's unusual to have, you know, as boxers, to get a big corporate company backing you like that. So I'm very lucky, and that they're behind me now, and I hopefully I can bring a big fight back home here to Ireland, a European title fight, and get back onto the national broadcaster. You know, it's been way too long since we've had a good night, you know, a good night of boxing in Ireland.
No, 100%. So look, Kurt Walker, Brendan Irvine, we have Kelly Harrington, obviously. We have Emmett Brennan, who we've just been discussing. We have the brother and sister, Aidan and Michaela Walsh. We have Aoife O'Rourke, and that's the team of 7. So hopefully they go and do really well. A world away from grafting amateurs and being sponsored with a ham or a turkey and 12 grand a year. I don't even know if I should bring this up. I don't know if I should sully this conversation by bringing this up, but Logan Paul and Floyd Mayweather was this international event, so let's talk about it. I see like it was the most read story in The Guardian yesterday, so there's obviously an interest there. Like, Mayweather kicked it off in his press conference afterwards and said, you know, because all the journalists are saying, well, like, the crowd are booing you at the end, there's not even judges, there's no winner here, and it was like a sparring session for a lot of it. And Mayweather sort of said, in effect, I'm not directly quoting him here, but he said, like, listen, if you're all dumb enough to watch it, I mean, why am I going to turn down 50 to 100 million for doing nothing? He said, you can go and write your articles and give out about it. I'm going back to my mansion. Legacy doesn't pay the bills, was what he said. This was just a heist in broad daylight. And, like, why wouldn't I do it? I mean, like, so he has a point. If people are dumb enough to watch it, and in America pay the $49.99 pay-per-view, and I think Logan Paul's going to make, they're estimating based on the pay-per-view numbers, he'll make about 20 million. Mayweather somewhere between 50 and 100. Hey, look, if there's a market for it, it's going to happen. Money talks, I suppose.
Yeah, who's the joke on? Like,
yeah,
you know, he's telling us he's robbing us, and we're still paying him.
Yeah.
You know, I'm robbing you, but we're still paying him. You know, it's a popularity.
Sorry, it came to my mind. I saw a tweet into the show saying that they didn't pay for the fight, that they streamed it. You know, they managed to get the stream for free, and they still felt robbed.
Yeah.
So
I seen that. To be honest with you, I did check the highlights the next day. You know, I just put on the YouTube highlights the next day just to kind of have a look at it, and my God, you know, he came under a bit of pressure and kind of an onslaught there in the first round, and you could actually see, and people are not aware of it, probably not even aware of this. Like, everyone's like, oh yeah, it's Mayweather, he's gonna smash him, like, he's the best boxer ever. But let's look at it from a boxing point of view, like, you know, and the whole kind of a size, weight, categories, all that kind of, you know, carry on. Like, your man was 30 plus pounds heavier than Mayweather.
I have it here. He was near 20 years younger. He had a 4-inch reach advantage, and he was 34 pounds heavier than Mayweather. It's like, in anyone's money, that's a lot to give up.
It's huge. It's huge. And it doesn't matter whether he's a technical or has this kind of finesse or whatever, you know, boxing ability. He doesn't have to have that. He's a YouTuber. He was never school boxing, but, like, he can throw a slap. Like, most people can throw a slap, you know what I mean? Like, most people can swing their hands and let them out. And if he catches you with one of them on top of the head without any head guard, that's going to hurt, no matter who you are.
Yeah.
So you could actually see Mayweather very clever in the first round, brought his elbows up very high, and we call him in the boxing world, he put the earmuffs on, you know, like, he really protected his head, so much so because he knew this guy was going to come out all guns blazing, all, you know, swinging, and then eventually, like, the gas runs out of the tank for, you know, Logan Paul, or is Logan, is it? It's Logan, is it?
That says all.
Jake Logan, yeah, they're two brothers.
That says all we need to know about this situation, I suppose. Isn't it? So that first round where Logan Paul comes out and throws a million punches, just like this is like outside of takeaway stuff, you know. Is that the most dangerous round for Mayweather?
Of course it is, yeah, because that's when he's full of energy, full of power, full of strength, and then as soon as he starts, it's a bit like those old computers or whatever. You go and you use your maximum move or your maximum power strength, and you do your move, you know. And that's what it was like. It was like Logan Paul was doing his best moves, but his energy was sapping all along. And of course, Mayweather was never going to meet him and fight fire with fire. He was really just like a turtle, putting the earmuffs on, bringing up the shell, protecting his head, because that was the, you know, Mayweather's not going to get knocked out with body shots or arm shots, whatever. He was protecting the most precious thing in the fight, which is his noggin, his head, because he knows one good slap, doesn't matter who you are, you can be the best boxer in the world, one good slap off someone 30 plus pound heavier than you will do serious damage to a head that's not protected. So he was very clever in how he kind of protected that and just let Logan Paul's energy, like, I only seen the highlight clip, but it seemed like he just let his energy sat down and then just start picking off the rounds, and he was never going to knock out Logan Paul. People are saying, oh, he's going to knock him out. Again, the same thing is, there's a flip side to what I said about 30 plus pounds. Mayweather was 30 less pounds, so he wasn't going to have the same effect with his power punches. And as well, he's 47 years old and so long out of the game, you know, all that. But look, at the end of the day, it was a show. It was a spectacle. It was some people might say a circus or whatever, but there's 2 lads going away there and they're after making a fortune. And that's just the way the world has gone now with social media. And social media just has so much of an impact and so much say on sporting events now. It's almost like whatever social media calls for, they get, you know.
Why not check out the Boyle Sports Betting app